Welcome to the collection of the craziest and wildest AITA Reddit stories of this week. From explosive family drama to shocking twists, these jaw-dropping tales will keep you hooked, questioning who's truly in the wrong. The first story for this collection is from Wanna Go Away Bird.
Wibta. If I moved out of state without telling my family or my husband, I am pregnant. I, 24F, am 6 weeks pregnant, and my husband is Caden, 28M. We're currently separated, and I'm not on speaking terms with most of my family, except for my Uncle Jerry, 55M, and Aunt Ann, 51F. The rest of my family, no contact. Here's why I'm separated from Caden. He went on a trip with my brother Arthur, 28M, my cousin Trevor, 21M, and Uncle Jerry. They planned a week-long getaway to Nevada for Trevor's 21st birthday, booking 2 hotel rooms. Arthur and Trevor shared one room, and Caden and Jerry shared the other. Everything was fine until the 5th night. That evening, they all went to a bar together, except for Jerry, where they met some girls and decided to bring them back to the hotel. While Jerry was out getting pizza, the others headed back with the girls. When Jerry returned, he walked into Arthur and Trevor's room, finding them with 2 girls doing things. Enraged, he kicked the girls out. Then, when Jerry went back to his own room, he found Caden fully clothed but with his pants down, receiving oral from a naked girl. Jerry just yelled at him and kicked the girl out as well, then left the room and left the hotel. He started walking toward his car. He could hear them calling after him, but he kept going. They eventually caught up with him near his car, begging him to keep this a secret. They all tried to excuse their behavior, saying it was one last chance to have fun before going back to their regular lives. Caden even cried, begging Jerry not to tell. Jerry said no to keeping it a secret, telling them that he couldn't lie to them and that I was like a daughter to him. If Jerry hadn't caught them, I doubt they'd have ever told me. They'd have taken this secret to their graves. When Jerry got home, he called me and told me everything. I was devastated and confronted Caden. He tried to blame me, saying I'd been neglecting him and he just wanted to have fun. Things got heated and we ended up yelling at each other. He called me some terrible names and says I was an abuser, and I just left, staying at my grandmother's house. For the next few days, I avoided everyone, and honestly, was one of the most peaceful times, just staying with my grandmother. My grandmother was unaware of the situation and what was going on anyways, until I woke up one morning when I found Caden, my mom, Arthur, and Trevor waiting for me in my grandmother's dining. I felt so much tension in the house. I did sit at the dining. My mom did speak first, and was insisting I should forgive Caden, saying all men make mistakes, and that we women should forgive and move on. I replied, that's a great bull excuse, that men can't take responsibility for their selfish actions and thinking. Arthur and Trevor tried to apologize, but I ignored them. Caden tried to hold my hand, and I slapped it away. He tried to talk his way out of situation. It was just embarrassing at this point. I was so over it. My grandmother did catch on the situation, and she was absolutely livid, especially at my own mother. She did immediately kick them out and told them they weren't welcome until they get their together. I was grateful to have my grandmother. My grandmother said I can stay however long I want. And honestly, I didn't want to bring any more drama or stress into her house. I thought it was best for me to step away for a while. Since then, I've been staying with Uncle Jerry and Aunt Ann, the only people who've supported me in all this. I've also told my best friend Lila, 25F, about everything, and she's been incredibly supportive. She even offered to let me move out of state with her and her wife, who are planning to buy a pretty small ranch that they found. At this point, I feel like just packing up, taking my birds and small dog. I do have a horse at my Uncle Jerry's ranch, and I'm planning to rent a trailer to bring him along when I move with Lil and her wife, once we settle into their new place. And honestly, to start fresh without telling anyone, except maybe Jerry, Ann, my grandmother, and our mutual friends who are on my side, I've been keeping my pregnancy a secret, even from my uncle and aunt, because I'm afraid that Trevor might find out and tell Caden. Trevor and Caden are really close, and I can't risk them knowing. The thought of leaving without telling my family and keeping my pregnancy from them feels right given how they all sided with Caden. It still hurts me so bad how my own brother and cousin would try to hide something like this from, considering how close we all were growing up. Now I don't know who they are anymore. On top of that, my other cousins and my other aunt and uncle, not Ann or Jerry, all agree I should forgive Caden and move on. It's honestly shocking to me that everyone is on his side when I'm the one who's been hurt by all of this. I honestly just want a fresh start. So, Wibte, if I just packed up and moved out of state without anyone in my family knowing, OP is not an AH for hiding her pregnancy news from her family, especially after finding out that her husband has been unfaithful in their relationship. She isolated herself and wants a fresh start, for which has every right. Not OP, rather, OP's husband is an AH for cheating on her wife. So I would rate him to 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing.
Now let's jump onto the next story from Select Ad 6986. AITA for telling a homeschool kid who broke into GTFO of my house? AITA for telling a mom that her 14-year-old son is not allowed to come into my house if no one is answering the door. Homeschooled, no delays, is of normal intelligence, but has no school friends. Fine, whatever, but it feeds into the story. 2 p.m. My also 14-year-old son and I were at a neighbor. He eventually walked back to my house with his friend, yet another neighbor. I told him about this kid being nearby, and to expect him to maybe try to catch up with them. He blew it off. Fine. 3:30 p.m. I walked back in the same direction and went to yet another person's house along the way to say hi. I visit them like once or twice a month because they never ever go to anyone's house at all, but she is up on current events, so I like to chat on occasion. Well, this kid, whom I have known his whole life, was home too, looking pretty bored, so I offered that he could walk to my house to see if my son was home. While I talked with his parents for maybe 20 minutes or so, he immediately obliged. 4 p.m. By the time I got home, my son was not home with his friend or even the other kid, obviously. So I was alone in the house with my preteen daughter. My daughter updated me to say her brother went to the friend's house to play basketball instead. So I asked her, what happened with the third kid? Did he go too, or did he come by too late? She tells me the kid came by after the other two already left, and that the boy was banging endlessly on the door. It really creeped her out because she was home alone and had no need or interest in seeing this kid. I was like, okay, a little aggressive, but whatever. 4:15 p.m. I'm falling asleep on the couch in the back den since all is so quiet. Then the banging starts again. My son was still not home. My daughter already ignored him the first, and I was snoozing in the back, so I ignored this second time. Then, immediately after the bang, this time the combo lock is being fumbled, so I was certain that it was actually my son, who had to bust in quick to use the bathroom really fast. But that wasn't the case. Usually my son is loud and would have spoken upon entry to the house, but it was dead silent after the front door opened. I was unsure at first if someone was actually in my house or not. The kid starts walking around my foyer, my living room, and my kitchen, calling out my son's name. I'm still sitting in the back wondering why TF this kid is in my house, after no one answered the door twice already. I was just waiting patiently in the back room for him to confront me, where I would have told him this is not acceptable behavior and that when no one answers the door, you walk away. But he didn't turn the corner. He walked out instead, leaving the door completely shut, but not locked. I go upstairs to my daughter to make sure she was okay, and she was not. She was like, WTF was this kid in the house? And I was spooked too. I just told her I would talk to the kid's mom about boundaries here. He is 14, he should know better. 5:15 p.m. The kid comes back a third time and bangs until we came down to tell. My son is clearly still not home, or he would have answered the door for you. And 2, you may not ever enter my house when the door is shut and no one seems to be around. He came up with a lame excuse like, oh, the door was wide open and I leaned on it and fell inwards, and yeah, sorry about that. I did share the story with the mom the next day. Who is the AH? Opinion? AITA? Edit. When I told the mother, she focused on the lock, whether he knew the code or whether the door was open. And when I told her the point of all this is to property train her son, so he does not have criminal issues as an adult, she then went into attack mode to tell me yes. He admitted coming in and even seeing the time on the oven in the kitchen, but then left right away. Therefore, I should either A, call the police and file a report, or B, accept that her kid was entitled to walk in. I went to the cops with my evidence, and they are more than happy to go have a little chat. I am now debating this option, hoping she or he apologizes, but clearly they won't. OP is not an AH for setting boundaries for the safety of her children, especially her daughter. The homeschool kid is an AH for causing trouble for OP by continuously banging on their door, even though he knew that OP's son was not at home. His behavior is intolerable. As for scores, I would rate the homeschool kid 2 out of 5 on the AH scale and 0 to the OP. Let's now move on to the next story from Eska089. AITA for refusing to cook after my BF tried to critique my cooking with a literal PowerPoint presentation. So this happened a few days ago, and I'm still trying to process. For context, I, 28F, have been with my BF, 30M, for about 2 years. We live together, and I've always done most of the cooking because I genuinely enjoy it. And he claims he can't even boil water without setting off the smoke alarm. The other night, I made one of our favorite meals, and while we were eating, he got a weird smirk on his face. He then says, you know, I've been taking notes. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but then he said, no, really, I made a presentation. I still thought it was a joke until he got up, connected his laptop to the TV, and opened a PowerPoint titled, Improving Our Home Dining Experience. I was in disbelief as he went slide by slide critiquing my dishes. Slide 1, too much garlic. Slide 2, pasta consistency. Slide 3, more salt, less sass. The kicker was slide 8, which was just a photo of Gordon Ramsay facepalming with the caption, "What he'd think." I was stunned. I told him if he had such detailed opinions, he should cook himself. He tried to backtrack, saying it was all in good fun and that he was just trying to help. But I wasn't laughing. I haven't cooked since. And now he's been living off cereal and takeout. He's sulking, saying I'm overreacting and ruining the joke. So, AITA, for refusing to cook after my BF presented me with a PowerPoint critique of my cooking. Edit.
Thanks for all of your comments and support. I just posted an update. Workplace update. AITA, for refusing to cook after my BF tried to critique my cooking with a literal PowerPoint presentation. Hey everyone, just when I thought this PowerPoint saga was done and dusted, it turns out the story took an unexpected dive into corporate drama. So, here's the latest. My ex works at a big consulting firm, and they found out about the PowerPoint breakup. Between all the shares and the news articles, thanks New York Post and Board Panda, the story somehow made its way into his office. And let's just say, it's been causing some serious disruption over there. The news came to me from a mutual friend who's actually a colleague of his. This friend couldn't resist sharing the story with a few other co-workers. And before long, the whole office knew that he was the boyfriend behind the Reddit-famous PowerPoint critiquing his girlfriend's cooking. People pieced it together pretty quickly. Honestly, how many PowerPoint-loving culinary critics can a single firm employ? And now it's become this unofficial inside joke that's taken over his team. Apparently, the real kicker happened yesterday. My ex had to present in a team meeting, and from what I've heard, it didn't exactly go smoothly. As soon as he pulled up his first slide, someone in the back muttered, "Hope this presentation is tastier than the last one," which set off a chain reaction of stifled laughs. A few people tried to keep it together, but by the time he was halfway through, someone else chimed in with, "Don't forget the salt." And at that point, half the room was doing their best to muffle laughter. I've been told he somehow managed to finish the presentation, but I can't imagine it was easy with his entire team dropping subtle and not so subtle hints every few minutes. And now, it's apparently become a running joke in the office. Anytime someone has to give feedback or present, someone will throw in, "Add a little more garlic," or "Is this feedback PowerPoint approved?" He's basically the office meme now, unofficially dubbed the PowerPoint Gourmet. And in what might be the best prank yet, someone went into the company's internal wiki page, the one for onboarding new hires, and added a little unofficial policy at the bottom. It now reads, "Company culture tip. PowerPoints are a powerful tool for workplace communication, but please keep presentations about personal matters, like cooking critiques, out of the home environment." I'm told that every new hire sees it, and it's been getting some serious laughs from anyone who spots it. My ex was apparently mortified when he found out, but couldn't exactly complain, because hey, it's just helpful advice for the team, right? Now it's a full-on company legend, with people half joking that they'll add it to the official onboarding materials. Meanwhile, my friends have been sending me updates non-stop, and I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. One friend texted, "You've created an office legend," while another said, "Please tell me he's not planning a rebuttal PowerPoint. Let's hope for everyone's sake that he isn't." As for me, I'm just sitting back with some popcorn, absolutely living for these updates. Who knew that dumping a guy with a PowerPoint addiction would make him the unwitting star of office legend? I feel like I'm watching a sitcom unfold, and every new bit of gossip is just the next episode. Honestly, I never imagined my breakup would lead to him being known as PowerPoint Gourmet around the office. But here we are. Moral of the story? If you're going to critique your partner's cooking with a slide deck, be prepared for that feedback to follow you right into the break room.
OP is not an AH. Rather, her BF is an AH for making fun of his cooking to the point that it became an office legend. Although he claimed that he only cracked a joke, deep down, it hurt OP so much, unbearably. As for scores, I would rate OP's BF 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from after-use-9330.
AITA for telling medical schools that one of their candidates is lying about their relationship with my deceased brother, 25F. I'm the youngest of 3 and grew up with 2 older brothers. My brother James was only 1 year ahead of me in school. My junior year of high school, James passed away in a car accident. It destroyed me and my family, and I don't know if we'll ever recover from this loss. The 3 of us went to Catholic school, and so our class sizes were fairly small. You pretty much knew everyone in your grade and in the grades immediately above and below you. There was a girl named Callie in James's grade, and they were in the same classes from grades K-12. They obviously knew each other from school, but they were never close friends. I know they sometimes sat at the same lunch table and went to the same parties occasionally, since the school was so small, but they never hung out one-on-one. He was no closer to her than the average girl in his grade. In fact, I explicitly remember him saying that she was rude and too cool to be friends on a few occasions. When James passed away, the entire school was rattled. People cried for days, even those who weren't all that close to him. I thought it was genuine for the most part, considering it was such a small school, and we all knew each other even if we weren't close friends. However, Callie's response was way out of the ordinary. I remember she sent a long letter to my mom explaining how much James meant to her a week after he died. My mom appreciated the letter, but was confused since she didn't realize they were friends. She also posted all over social media saying that her best friend since kindergarten passed away. It's been almost a decade, and she still posts pictures of him from the school yearbook on his birthday and date of his passing. Since they weren't close friends, the only picture of them together are large class photos, and some of them have already been reposted. It's kind of a running joke in my family, and something we all laugh about. For example, my dad always asks how James' best friend is doing, and we all read and laugh about the social media posts. I don't doubt the death was shocking and sad for her at the time, but it's gone on way too long, and I can't help but feel she's using my brother's passing for attention and sympathy. One of my friends from high school is actually family friends with Callie. My friend told me that Callie told everyone from college about James, and whenever she met her college friends, they asked if she was close with James too. This friend called me and said that Callie applied to medical school earlier this year. Apparently, her personal statement was all about her best friend's death and how it inspired her to pursue a career as an emergency physician. My friend actually has a copy of the personal statement since Callie asked her to edit it, and it was shocking. She described growing up with my brother and writing about all the special times they had together, including braving the scariest rides at Disneyland together, going on night swims, and spending hours talking on the phone. She said he was her childhood crush, and she was elated when he expressed that he felt the same way their junior year of high school. She then described ice cream dates, the junior prom, and saying, "I love you" for the first time. It would have been touching if any of it had been true. I was there for my brother's childhood, and I think I would have remembered them going to Disneyland together. I know they weren't dating because my brother dated the same girl for 3 years in high school. She was actually impacted by my brother's passing and keeps in touch with my mom to this day, and sometimes celebrates his birthday with my family. Apparently, the medical schools liked the personal statement because she already has 2 interview invitations. I don't know all the schools she applied to, but my family friend knows the schools that have invited her for interviews. I ended up writing long emails to the admissions committee of both medical schools, explaining that I am the boy in the personal statement's younger sister, and none of it was true. A few days have passed, and I'm starting to wonder if I did the right thing. I felt so upset that she was using my brother and his death for her personal statement, especially when other applicants might have actually experienced loss that motivated them to pursue a career in medicine. Again, I know she worked hard to get into medical school, and maybe this was petty. At the very least, I don't think it was great for my karma. AITA? OP is not an AH. Her deceased brother's schoolmate is an AH for seeking sympathy and attention from people after OP's brother's death. She is a big AH for using a deceased person's name for getting admission in her medical school. It is highly unethical. As for scores, I would rate the liar girl 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Birthday Dash Gift. AITA for turning down the birthday gift my mom's boyfriend gave me. I 14F. I'm kind of confused if I'm in the wrong here. I'm leaning towards that I am, but I want someone else's opinion. My mom started dating a new guy like 6-ish months ago, and I honestly never really liked him. I don't know how to explain it other than he just gives me weird vibes. I've been trying to be nice though, because my mom likes him, and I want her to be happy. He's been trying to make an effort, I think. He'll send me texts throughout the day, and pictures. He tells me I'm smart and stuff too, which is nice, but I don't know. I'm just kind of uncomfortable with it. My mom says he's just being nice, but I don't know. Anyway, my birthday was a couple days ago, and he got me a really expensive necklace. He also gave me a ticket to a show that I've been wanting to go see, and he said he has the other one and that we should go together. I just felt like it was too much, and I told him that I was really grateful, but that I couldn't accept them. He got really mad, and he said that he already spent the money, so I should just take it and go with it. But I really didn't want to. It ended with him yelling at me and me basically running away to my bed. My family thinks I was too mean and that he's just trying to bond with me. I don't know. AITA update. So, if any of you were interested, you were right. My mom's boyfriend was trying to groom me. Apparently, for as much as my family said I was overreacting by turning down his gift, my mom didn't like that he yelled at me. Apparently, while she was pushing him for answers about why he got me something so expensive in the first place, he said something she thought was suspicious. Turns out he only started dating her because my mom had a picture of her, my older sister, and me on her dating profile, and he wanted to get to me, which is creepy. She said she's taking that picture off her profile now, but also, she's not going to go on dates for a while, which I definitely feel bad about. I can't help but feel like it's my fault. But yeah, that's the update. Thank you guys for being so nice even if you thought I was being a little stupid. I hadn't really learned much about predators before now. Edit. People keep bringing it up, so maybe some of you can give me advice. In a comment, I mentioned him watching me one weekend by himself and sleeping through most of it. Some of you guys are thinking he drugged me and did something because I only got tired after he made me lunch and I woke up sore. Should I actually tell my mom? I don't really see why it matters, considering it happened like 2 weeks ago, and I don't think I could prove anything anyway. Update 2. I don't know if this will be my last update or not, but I wanted to post it because of how many of you seemed worried about me. I told my mom. It was really hard. I want to say I was brave about it, but I cried a lot and was really scared. I could barely actually say it out loud, so I showed her my Reddit post and what you guys were saying. She told me that I shouldn't trust strangers on the internet, but that she agreed that what happened the weekend he was checking in on me was weird. She took me to the ER right after I told her, even though it's really not an emergency. I don't really understand everything that the doctors did, so please forgive me if I say anything wrong. They made me do a blood test, urine test, and they took some of my hair because they said that some drugs can be detectable for a few weeks after. The urine test came back already, and it was confusing because at first they said it was PCP, but then they said that they did another test. And apparently there are traces of ketamine, so I don't really know if that means I tested positive for both, or if it was only ketamine. I mean, I've never taken either of those things. So he definitely drugged me, though they said he probably gave me something else too, because how I described it didn't seem like ketamine. But I don't really know what that means. Anyway, I guess we're waiting to see if anything else comes back. They also did a pelvic exam and some ultrasound thing. I don't remember what they called it. They said there was trauma, so I was either or assaulted in some way. I am, or was I guess, a virgin, so there's no debate there. I also don't exactly know how they can tell. But obviously it's their job, so I don't really feel any way about it. But the social worker they brought in said I'm probably in shock. I told them I had gotten my period afterwards with bad cramps, but they told me that it was probably not actually my period and just me bleeding from it. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm still in the hospital currently. I don't really know why, but I am. I'm at least staying till tomorrow apparently. They want me to meet with a psychologist, and they were talking about starting me on some medication. As for police, they've been contacted, but my mom isn't telling me much. I had to answer so many questions. Thank you guys for being so nice. I probably would have never known what happened if someone didn't point it out. I don't know how exactly I feel about that, because maybe it would have been nicer to not know. But still, thanks. I'm also sorry if this post doesn't make sense. I don't really feel like myself. OP is not an AH for refusing to accept or receiving a birthday present from her mom's toxic boyfriend. He is a big AH for shouting at OP for not accepting the gift, and then doing that mean and criminal thing to OP. OP's mom's BF is the biggest AH, so I would rate him 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, is innocent, and I would her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the last story from OK-bar-4003. AITA for refusing to pay for an emergency rescue and ditching my trip mates. Years ago, I planned snowboard trip to the West Coast. I live on the East Coast, Ice Baby. I've always wanted to go there, and now I had money to afford the flight. My GF at the time didn't want to go as she is not very skilled, and didn't want to spend that kind of money just to snowboard the bunny slops. Well, some of my friends caught wind of this and wanted to go. Now keep in mind, I taught them all how to snowboard, and I know their skill level. Some are decent, some are very basic level snowboarders. I, however, have been snowboarding for 20 years. I love snowboard. I am no Shaun White, but I can make it down the mountain with control and with speed. I told them straight up, I plan to do the diamonds, and maybe even spend the afternoon in the bowls. The bowls are typically unmaintained, ungroomed trails that are very steep, rocky with a lot of hidden obstacles, like hidden cliff drops. So I did not plan to spend the day with them. I would maybe do a warm-up run with them, and maybe follow them for a few blues. But I wanted to do the tough stuff and have fun. Fast forward, there's 8 of us in Colorado. Day 1, we all go out and spend most of the day together. I wander off for a bit and do my diamond and double diamond runs alone. West Coast skiing is nothing like East Coast. I had a blast and some sore legs. Worth it. Well, day 2, some of them got an ego and said they were going to follow me. I told them I was going to the bowls. They all got pumped and said they wanted to go too. I told them not that I know they weren't good enough for it. Comment? Perhaps. but it was with their well-being in mind. Well, you can't tell me what to do. Fine. So up the lift we went. We had to walk about a quarter mile to the bowl from the lift, past a sign with a warning, "You are entering the bowls. Expert level required. Ski patrol may require added resources for rescue. Proceed at your own caution." So, we paused to catch our breath, strapped in, and went. Immediately, this went to as some of them thought they could leaf drop the run, leaning on one edge of the board facing up the mountain, going from side to side like a leaf falling from a tree. One of them fell down a blind drop and twisted his ankle really badly. We weren't even halfway down the trail. After some waiting and discussions, we finally decided we need to get help. No discussion here. I said I was going to get ski patrol. Flat out gave them all a tongue lashing saying they are amateurs. And only I was capable of getting to the bottom without having an injury. Well, I was correct. Made it out of the bowls in one piece, made it to one of the stations and got ski patrol. They took me on a snowmobile to go up to find him. Total failure. Snowmobile got buried in the snow and we were stuck. We got it unstuck and turned around. So, we took the lift and skid over to them. They first tried to strap him in, but ski patrol said it was way too unsafe for them to ski him down given the rough terrain. Tried to see if we could splint the leg and walk him down. Nothing. They called for a snow truck to come up and get them. A little over an hour later, it comes driving up. They all pile in and leave. I go down the run with ski patrol, who gave me a whole lecture about how dangerous it is for unexperienced riders to do the bowls. I got a text that my buddy was okay, sprained ankle, and they were leaving to go to the hospital. I said, "Go without me," and spent the rest of the afternoon alone. Well, day 3. No one wanted to go to the mountain and decides to stay at the house and hang out. I left alone and spent the day skiing. Fast forward about 2 weeks, he gets sent a bill for the emergency rescue, approximately $2,000 USD for the truck rental. They all said they would chip in to help pay for it. I said, "Hell no, you reap what you sow." Said I warned them about the consequences. AITA? OP is not an AH here. It was his friends who were AHs for blaming OP, despite OP keeping them aware of the consequences they had to face throughout the journey. They kept blaming OP, which is not the right thing to do. As for scores, I would rate OP's friends 2 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for refusing to go to a meeting with the man who molested my wife when she was a child and not being receptive to any sort of apology from him. I met my wife in college, and we've been married for a little over 4 years now. After we got engaged, my wife told me there was something serious she needed to tell me before we got married. I learned that when she was around 6 years old, she was by her cousin, who was in 6th grade at the time. It went on for several months, and it didn't come out until her mom took her to a psychologist because she was acting out so much, i.e. wetting the bed, having meltdowns, fighting at school. I won't get into details, but the things he did were extreme and things that no young children should be subjected to. I actually got teary hearing about it, and it was the first time my wife had ever seen my cry. The cousin pleaded guilty to the crime in juvenile court, and it came out that he had also been molested as a child. The cousin served some time in juvenile prison and also got help for his issues. According to my wife, both he and his mother have taken responsibility and expressed genuine remorse. The cousin and my wife have had a few face-to-face meetings over the years, and he's told her repeatedly how sorry he is and how much guilt he feels for putting her in the position. He's also asked if there is anything he can do for her and has even offered to pay for her therapy, which my wife has declined. My wife has forgiven him and feels sorry about what he went through as a child, and also the intense guilt he feels for his actions. The families don't socialize or spend holidays together anymore because it's too painful for everyone involved, but I don't think there are bad feelings anymore. With that being said, my wife and her older brother are clear that they don't want their kids near him after what happened. My wife is actually a juvenile defense attorney now and represents a lot of young kids, like her cousin. She's great at her job and has a ton of empathy for the kids she works with. I can see how one would have empathy for kids who have been through a lot and then commit crimes, but it's much harder for me to be understanding towards my wife's cousin, since I've seen firsthand how much this has impacted her. She has night terrors sometimes, impulsively jerks when someone touches certain parts of her body, i.e. lower back, and had a lot of trouble enjoying when we first started dating. I'm glad that my wife has found peace and forgives her cousin, but I personally don't feel anything but rage when I think of him. Anyways, last night, my wife sat me down and told me she had something to speak with me about. Her cousin called her and expressed that he has a new girlfriend. He's been upfront with the woman about his history and about what he did to my wife when she was little. The woman now wants to have a conversation with my wife to better understand the situation, and my wife has agreed to meet them for coffee and describe what happened and how it's impacted her. My wife told me that she also wants to stress that her cousin took responsibility immediately, has expressed genuine remorse over the years, served his time without complaint, and has gone to therapy to work through his issues. My wife says she isn't trying to sway his girlfriend or tell her how to feel about it, but is instead trying to give her a complete picture of what happened. My wife asked if I would come too, because the cousin wants to have a conversation with me as well to express his remorse. He made this offer shortly after we got married, but I told my wife I wasn't in a place to be receptive to his apology. Once again, I told my wife that I'm probably not going to be receptive to an apology. I also said that if he's trying to convince his girlfriend that he's not a terrible person, I shouldn't be there because I'll definitely thwart his plans. My wife seemed confused and asked what I meant, and I said I'm pissed about what he did and can't sit back and listen to her describe what a model citizen he's been after, he raped her, and not lose my shit. My wife said that he's done everything right since the event occurred and asked what else I expect of him. I said I don't expect anything, but I don't want to be in the same room as someone who did such terrible things to her. My wife reminded me that he was a child at the time and was also being abused at home, and said we need to take those things into account when evaluating his moral culpability. I said that when I was in 6th grade, I wouldn't have dreamed of raping an innocent 6-year-old. I said that their cousin hurt her, and as her husband, there's nothing in my eyes that will ever change that. I also said I don't believe she truly thinks her cousin has changed, since she and her brother won't allow their children near the guy. My wife got teary and said that she'd never take any kind of risk with our children, even if she was 99.9% sure he'd changed. She also said I was making what happened about my feelings. She said she doesn't understand how I can't have empathy for a man who was abused as a child, made a mistake, and has since taken responsibility and made a genuine effort to make things right with his victim. I said I only care about her, and she said if I cared, I would at least try and see her perspective. My wife has been angry and distant with me all day. She seems to agree that I'm not in a good place to go to the meeting with the cousin, but she's frustrated by the things I said. Specifically, she doesn't like that I brought our girls into it and used her protective instincts against her. I'm not trying to override her feelings on the matter, but also, I think I have a right to have my own feelings towards the person who harmed her. AITA is not an AH for refusing to meet with a person who molested his wife in the past. OP's reaction is 100% justified. His wife just wanted to forgive him, but OP refused to meet him, which is absolutely right. As for scores, I would rate OP's wife 1, OP's wife cousin 3.5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story. From FHXUA did IW. AITA for refusing to host Thanksgiving this year? I, 30F, and my darling husband, 30M, hosted last year my in-laws for Thanksgiving. It was a disaster. I am a nurse and work nights. I was exhausted. I was late making dinner. My DH's grandparents had to get fast food BC. I took too long to cook. My MIL was supposed to bring 3 sides, but she ended up bringing 1 frozen meatloaf that was about 6 inches long to feed 9 people. Essentially, she brought nothing to share. They came over, and at the end of the night they packed up all of our food and took it with them. We were under the impression they were putting the food in our fridge because that's what they said they were doing. We had absolutely no leftovers. Earlier this year, my husband's grandmother died after a 3-week hospital stay. I did everything I could to be there for MIL. I brought food, showed up every other day to spend time with Grandma, drove Grandpa back and forth to visit. When she passed, I bought MIL dress for the funeral. I checked in on MIL. Hubby and I drove Grandpa to the funeral. Ever since my MIL has been standoffish, I don't know why. I've run myself ragged to take care of her. Her own children don't check in on her as often as I do, or did. A week ago, she called me to ask about Thanksgiving dinner, and I told her I wasn't cooking. I was tired, I work a lot, 50 hours a week, and I don't appreciate people taking food they didn't cook out of my kitchen. She immediately started crying and telling me she lost her best friend. It's the first holiday season without her mom. She's sad. She's lonely. I told her tough luck. I'm tired of being taken for granted. She called my DH, who said he is staying out of it, but that now might not be the time for me to make a grand statement. AITA? Update. Last year I asked for help, but everyone either ignored me or gave some lame excuse like, I'm not good in the kitchen, or I don't know how to cook. Meanwhile, they're sitting around while I'm running around the kitchen all day. After the meal, same thing. They sit around chatting and drinking while I'm the only one cleaning up.
So, this year, I said enough is enough. I told them I'm not hosting Thanksgiving. I suggested someone else step up, or we could split the cost of catering. Cue the drama. My siblings flipped out, complaining about how it's tradition for me to host. My mom called me selfish, and my aunt said I was ruining Thanksgiving for the kids because they love coming to my house. Now, they're all upset with me, calling me lazy and saying I'm ruining the holiday. Honestly, I'm tired of being treated like their personal chef and cleanup crew every year, but now I feel guilty for putting my foot down. Edit. Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and opinions. I didn't expect so many responses, and I really appreciate the support and perspectives shared. It's been reassuring to know I wasn't being unreasonable in this situation. Thanks again. My MIL and I have not gotten along since the day we met. She is very traditional and feels that women should stay home and raise the children, and should always be quiet and reserved. The man is king of his castle, and the wife is subservient to him. I am the total opposite. While I was a saham until both of my children, 15 and 17, began elementary school, I enjoy working outside of the home and enjoy having a career. I am very outspoken, and my husband and I treat each other like equal partners in our relationship. I have hosted Thanksgiving at our home since our first year together. We have always invited my in-laws, and without fail, my MIL has found something to complain about every single year. From the food I cook to the clothes I am wearing, she has made some passive-aggressive comments. For example, I do not put the stuffing in the turkey when I bake it. I have never done that. My MIL makes comments about how dry the turkey is, because it isn't stuffed, and how she never would serve dry turkey to guests. Last year, she complained to my husband that I am not welcoming to them, that I am crass and rude and unladylike. My husband told her that if she was kinder to me and respected the fact that I am or never will be a traditional housewife, I would be kinder to her. That made her very upset, and she told him that she will never accept me as his wife. Last week, she called my husband and asked when we can expect them for Thanksgiving dinner. I told my husband that maybe this year we could just do it as a family, the four of us only, and that I really wasn't looking forward to yet another visit where his mother was constantly putting me down and insulting my home food clothing. He said that he agreed, but they are his only family, other than us, and it didn't feel right to not have them here. I told my husband that I respected that they were his parents, but I just wanted 1 year where I could enjoy the holidays with my family without having to hide in the bathroom and cry. Update 2. After speaking to a Filipina friend of mine, reading everyone's comments and calming down, I decided to talk to MIL. She indeed did not mean to hurt my feelings or say anything with bad intentions. She really thought she was just complimenting me. She was very sorry for hurting me and wants to move on. She says she accepts me and loves me. Honestly, I've had a rough couple of months with unrelated issues, and I think her comments yesterday were just the straw that broke the camel's back. My boyfriend did get defensive when we talked about what happened, but he agreed to back me up if it happens again, and talk to her about not mentioning my weight. He also supports me correcting her or letting her know if she's being rude in the future. As far as Thanksgiving, I decided that the family being together is more important than my hurt feelings. I do enjoy making it nice for everyone. We don't know how many years she may have left, and I think I can let this incident go for now. I'm not confident that she will change, but I can probably handle anything for a couple days a year. My partner and I have dated for a few years, lived together for 2. When I first met his mom, I was very nervous and wanted her to like me. I learned some customs that show respect and did them. I cooked meals from scratch for her that she loved. Holidays were hosted in our home. I would cook for days and serve the whole family, making sure every detail was perfect. Holidays were lovely. I never had times like that with my own family, and was grateful to the point of tearing up many times, not in front of my partner's family. My partner and I have a business that takes up much of our time, and hadn't seen his mother much lately, so I planned a day to pick her up, take her to a local coffee shop she enjoys, and to lunch. As soon as she saw me, she immediately commented that I had lost weight and complimented me multiple times, then asking to take selfies with me so she could post them on Facebook because I looked so pretty. I have had issues with eating disorders in the past, so the comments did make me feel weird. but I knew she was trying to compliment me, so I didn't say anything. We went to lunch and she wanted to take more selfies and was again complimenting my looks. She said, "You were okay before, but too overweight." I don't know why this hurt me, but it did. I blinked back tears, and the food came. I couldn't eat it, and found myself pushing food around, and only taking some bites of dry salad. My partner and mom ate, either not noticing that I wasn't really eating or not commenting on it. I did not want to cause a scene, because again, I knew she was trying to say something nice, but she is very blunt. She is not aware that I used to starve myself. She probably wouldn't have said it if she did. After lunch, she needed to go to the restroom, so I helped her. She's in her 80s and uses a cane but needs to be steadied. While she was washing her hands, she told me, "You know, I never liked you, but you're okay now." That did it. I couldn't hide the hurt anymore. I teared up and stammered awkwardly that her son would be right back to help her walk to the table. I went to the table and quietly told my partner I would take an Uber home, that I was upset about something his mom said, but I would see him at home. His mom tried to call me, but I decided not to answer. I guess the reason I'm feeling so upset is that I'm feeling like I'm only worth something if I'm thinner. I also thought she always liked me. She acted like she did. Now it all feels fake. I don't want to host Thanksgiving anymore. Why should I kill myself cooking for days for someone who only really liked me when I lost a few pounds? My partner thinks I'm overreacting, and I misunderstood her. He said it's normal for MILs to not like DILs at first, because we take away their sons. But I didn't take him away. He is the one who hasn't made an effort to spend much time with her. Every time we have seen her is because I organized it. But she's old, she's a blunt Asian mom, and she doesn't know I had eating disorders. So, am I the asshole for wanting to cancel Thanksgiving? Should I just forgive her and suck it up so the family has a nice Thanksgiving together? Am I being a huge baby? OP is not an AH for being frustrated with her dysfunctional in-laws. OP's refusal to host Thanksgiving and her insistence on not inviting her toxic mother-in-law to the party is 100% justified. So I would rate OP 0 and OP's mother-in-law 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story of this chapter from Infinite-Minute 2004. AITA for losing it on my roommate for trashing my newborn's formula. I, 20F, rent a room from my roommate, 26F dad. She is a single mother. I'm a single mother. I have a 12-week-old baby who is exclusively on Nutramigen formula. For those who don't know, Nutramigen is really expensive, and the WIC I get barely covers the cost of formula and the fresh food I'm allotted to get with WIC. My daughter is so colicky and has never been happy since she was born. I know this sucks for my roommate and her own kid, who's 2. I do my best to keep my daughter calm and happy, but her doctor said she's just an unhappy baby and will grow out of it. I had to put her in daycare at 6 weeks old, and I currently work retail for barely above minimum wage, which is $7.25 USD in my state LMAO. So it's been a struggle. My roommate has some different parenting beliefs. Her kid still breastfeeds when they want to. She believes in delayed vaccines, is vegetarian, but wants to go vegan with her kid, etc. A lot of woo-woo stuff, which if it works for her and her kid, great. I literally stay in my room with my daughter 90% of the time because she tries to convince me that I'm doing things wrong. Like when my daughter spits up, projectile vomits, or has a blowout, should be giving her oatmeal baths instead of using baby Aveeno type LOL. To make a really long story short, she has never liked the fact I didn't want to breastfeed my daughter. I tried in the hospital and was told by a lactation consultant that it would be difficult. My daughter has a tongue tie and weak latch, and formula would probably be best. So onto formula we went. The similar formula the hospital gave me gave my daughter bloody. So her doctor had me try Nutramigen, and yay, it was something she can keep down 50% of the time. She still spits up or vomits, and my roommate will make comments about how if I breastfed, she wouldn't be so sick. I'm poisoning her with formula, etc. I just roll my eyes and try to avoid her in the common areas of her house. I get home today after working and my daughter is hungry, cries screaming her head off. Daycare worker said she refused her last bottle at daycare and she threw up on the car ride home. And I'm looking for her formula cans and can't find them. I just start yelling, "Where the f*** is her formula?" Because my roommate likes to change around the kitchen items like groceries in the pantry or pots and pans, and it always stresses me out. My roommate walked into the kitchen and said she got rid of it. I yelled at her, "What the f*** do you mean you got rid of it?" She yelled back that she couldn't stand to see me feed my baby poison any longer and had to do something about it. She pointed to the trash can, and I opened it up and saw the powder in the trash where she had just opened up the formula cans and dumped them. I just lost my and screamed at her and told her she needed to replace my daughter's formula right the now. Her dad pays her bills and he makes an extra $600 a month off me, not including utilities. I don't have mommy or daddy's tit to suck on and live off of. She started yelling back at me that I couldn't talk to her that way in her own house, and I had to go. I grab my daughter, who's still in her car seat, and start going to my room, where I can lock the door, and my roommate grabbed the car seat handle and tried to yank my daughter away from me. I yelled at her again to not touch my daughter and ended up locking us both in the room. After I calmed down a bit, I ended up calling my mom to see if I could borrow money to get my daughter more formula until I get paid next week. I explained everything to my mom, got angry all over again. My mom asked, why did I yell at my roommate, and I should have kept my composure better, and said I get what I deserve if I end up homeless with my daughter LMAO. I don't know anymore. I don't think I am, but my mom sure made me feel like one. I got to get TF out of here for both our sakes. AITA, edit. Since some of y'all want to be I know I should have kept my legs closed, LOL. My daughter's father pays $150 per month in child support and sees her once a week. It isn't much, but I'm grateful for what I can get. Don't need people on Reddit calling me names and shit. I feel bad enough for my situation in the fact I brought a baby into this world when I wasn't prepared. My daughter's doctor's office gave me 4 sample cans of her formula before they closed, which will last us a few days. I will be calling my WIC caseworker in the morning too to see if she can be of any help. Police report has been filed. They suggested I call the National Domestic Violence Hotline as well. Waiting to see if any of the shelters in my area have space for us both. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take money I don't have and get a hotel room because I can't stay here any longer. Called my roommate's dad again and explained everything. He said he can't help me because he has to look out for his daughter first, LMAO. Said if I don't pay rent on the first of deck, he's filing eviction papers. I'm ready to say good riddance anyways, TBH. I'm tired and scared and angry. I have to go to work tomorrow and try and figure all of this out on my own. I can't even call out if I wanted to, because if I call out, I don't get paid, and I need the money more than ever right now, LOL. I'm gonna see if her dad will take her for a day or two, but I'm not hopeful on that either, because he's never had any real alone time her. If it weren't for the court-ordered child support, he wouldn't pay anything at all. Edit 2. One women's shelter won't have space for us until the weekend, but the worker I spoke to said we have a spot available as soon as it comes up. Here's hoping I can survive wacko roommate for a few more days and maybe get my money back for the all formula she wasted. OP is not an AH, and her frustration for her baby's well-being is 100% justified. OP's roommate is an AH for being intrusive and criticizing. OP just took a stand for her baby, nothing else. As for scores, I would rate OP's roommate 3.5 out of 5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the last story of this chapter from the disastrous-eb 3543. AITA for gifting only one of my daughters a maternity photo shoot. I, 53F, am a single mother of 2 daughters, Claire, 26F, and Ava, 17F. They are currently both pregnant. Claire is nearly 7 months along and Ava is 4 months. Claire is married and her baby was planned. Ava's on the other end was a complete shock to all of us. She keeps saying it was an honest mistake, but she seemed so overjoyed about the news that I'm almost suspicious if she's telling the truth. Obviously, it's too late now, so the only thing we can do is keep marching forward. I was severely disappointed, but she decided to keep her pregnancy, and I will support her choice. I'll look after the baby anytime I can, at least for the first several months, as long as she and her BF finish school and get jobs. I work from home, so I know I can do it. This is so they'll be able to some money by avoiding daycare costs. A little over a week ago, Claire came to visit me and brought up maternity photo shoots. She said she'd love one, but the professional ones can cost a lot, and she wanted to save as much money for the baby as possible. She seemed truly disappointed, and I found myself offering to pay in full for her to have one. She offered to at least pay for a part of it, but I insisted it'll be an early birthday gift for my granddaughter, and told her not to worry about it. Turns out that Ava overheard us and came to me later asking for one as well. I offered to ask her sister if she could possibly pose in a couple shots at her shoot. Ava didn't like that idea. She said she wants a different background style than her sister. Plus, she wanted to wait to do it until her pregnancy bump is more obvious. She wants a complete photo shoot of her own. I decided to be blunt and just tell her I wouldn't pay for her to have a professional photo shoot. I wouldn't even lend her part of the fee. Her and her BF will have to come up with the money on their own if they want a nice, fancy photo shoot. She seemed shocked and became angry at me. She yelled how it wasn't fair that Claire gets a fully paid pro photo shoot when I wouldn't even partially help her pay for one. She insisted I'm already favoring one grandchild over the other. She even began to cry. That is absolutely not true. Claire's photo shoot is going to be a few $100s, if not more. But it's the only cost I'm helping her with. Her and her husband are covering all other baby expenses on their own. With Ava, it's a given I'll be the one paying for the majority of the baby stuff. Crib, diapers, etc. Ava and her BF will contribute what they can, but it won't be a lot. I love both my daughters, but don't want to pay a huge amount twice when I'm already helping Ava out so much. This photo shoot is the only gift help Claire has let me give her throughout her pregnancy, so this is important to me. I'd be happy to help Ava find a pretty place and take pictures of her own, but she ignored me when I suggested that. Ava is still giving me the silent treatment. I told my sister about everything, and she said she understood why Ava was so upset. To her, it seems totally unfair that I won't give this special gift to both my daughters, no matter what I'm already paying for.
She pointed out how it's definitely possible for me to rework my budget to afford both photo shoots. It would be a bit tough, but totally doable. My sister says it looks like I'm only giving Claire a fully paid photo shoot as some sorts of punishment for Ava, since she got pregnant so young. Some of my friends agree with me, but the rest agree with what my sister said. I've just been so stressed over Ava's pregnancy. I'm thinking it might be clouding my judgment. AITA, TLDR. Both of my daughters are pregnant. One of them is still a teenager. I will be almost entirely supporting my teen with the baby costs. I've decided to gift my other daughter a fully paid pro-maternity photo shoot. My teen also wants one, but I don't want to just pay it for her since I'm already paying for so many of her baby stuff. I won't even lend her part of the money. Is that unfair? AITA? OP is not an AH here for prioritizing her budget and treating her daughters differently based on their circumstances. OP daughter is overreacting here. AITA for wanting to break up with my boyfriend because of his mom? I'm a 20-year-old female, and it's obvious that my boyfriend's mom doesn't like me. For some context, I've been dating my boyfriend for 2 years and have known him for 3. His mother, a 43-year-old single mom, lives 2 hours away from us and hasn't been in a relationship for years. It all started in 2022, during my freshman year of college. At the time, my boyfriend and I were just friends in the same friend group. During a parents' weekend event, my boyfriend asked me to meet his mom at the frat house where it was being held. I showed up with my best friend. When I met her, I reached out for a hug, but she seemed bothered by it. I apologized, but she went on to whore-shame me for my outfit. A Lululemon skirt and a hoodie. Feeling uncomfortable, I walked away. Later that night, after most parents had left, she was still there, drinking with college students, which felt unusual. She approached me again and asked if I was interested in her son. I politely said no, but she didn't believe me. Then, she asked if I knew her son was a virgin, which he wasn't, and demanded to know if I was one too. She said she didn't want her son dating a whore, and even demanded proof of my virginity and STD results. I told her I wasn't comfortable discussing that, and tried to leave, but she kept at it. Eventually, I told my boyfriend what happened, which led to an argument between him and his mom. Things were awkward between us for a while after that. Fast forward a few months, my boyfriend and I grew closer, and we started dating. When his mom found out, all hell broke loose. She began calling him for hours every day and would show up unannounced. I saw texts where she dragged my name through the mud. My boyfriend defended me, but it didn't help much. Things got worse when we moved in together in 2023 due to rooming issues. His mom wasn't happy about it and began invading our privacy. She would go through our trash, my clothes, and even my makeup. She constantly asked if her son and I were active and threatened to cut his if we were. She even attacked my parents, accusing them of being drug dealers simply because they're Mexican. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and argued with my boyfriend. We went low contact with his mom for a while, which helped. But once we re-established communication, her behavior escalated again. She'd call me during work or class, accusing me of stealing her son. I begged my boyfriend to talk to her, and after a serious conversation, things seemed to improve. She apologized to me, and I accepted it. For a while, everything was great. Then, in October, on my birthday, my boyfriend and friends threw me a surprise party. It was a wonderful evening until I went to grab his phone and saw a disgusting message from his mom. She was comparing me to her, saying she felt replaced and betrayed by him for choosing me over her. She claimed he wasn't in the right headspace to prioritize me over his mother.
I was devastated. I thought her harassment had ended, but clearly, it hadn't. I started questioning my future with my boyfriend. What if this never gets better? What if she speaks badly about me to my children someday? What if she ruins my marriage? I waited for my boyfriend to bring up the message, but he didn't. When I confronted him, he got defensive, accusing me of snooping through his messages. I was furious and began packing to leave. He stopped me, promising to talk to her, but it's been months and still hasn't. I feel so unheard and confused. I love my boyfriend, but I'm tired of constantly being harassed and treated like an intruder in his life. All I've ever wanted was for his mom to support and love me. My ex-boyfriend's mom was so wonderful. We had sleepovers, got our nails done together, and shared everything. I don't understand why my current boyfriend's mom treats me this way. There have been many graphic detailed moments with her that I can't discuss due to them finding this post. So, am I the for wanting to leave my boyfriend because of his mom? OP is not an AH. She is dealing with the toxic behavior of her boyfriend's mother. OP is completely justified in her actions. Her boyfriend's mother is trying to invade OP's privacy. Her boyfriend and his mother are AHs for not supporting OP in this stressful situation. As for scores, I would rate OP's boyfriend 2.5, his mother 2, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Sarah Butler, 312.
AITA for telling my husband to just never mind. I, 36F, grew up in an ultra-conservative Christian family. I have a twin and 3 younger siblings that I often had to help take care of growing up. My mom was sick a lot, so it was more involved than just babysitting them for a few days. I was, for all intents and purposes, junior mom. My twin also helped out, but when it came to things like staying up all night with a sick kid, it was me. So I had a lot of responsibilities at a very young age. Now, I've been an emotional wreck of a person my entire life. I was 9, and I would stand at the sink doing dishes and would burst into tears. When grilled about why by my parents, I couldn't explain it. I didn't know why I felt so sad and hopeless. I just knew that I did. I also did not get along with my adoptive dad, at all. Think mortal enemies, on speaking terms. My parents decided to take me to a Christian counselor, to figure me out and fix me. She diagnosed me with ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. I won't go into a lot of detail, let's just say her prescribed treatment just made things worse. And then I learned that it was indeed not a safe space to confide in, because she was immediately, at the end of literally every session, going back and telling my parents everything we had talked about. And then I would be punished, corrected, accordingly based on what I'd said. After a while, a weird sort of self-preservation kicked in, and I learned how to seem normal. But I was not normal. I was seriously struggling. At least 3 seed attempts from 8th to 12th grade. I even lived with my grandparents for a little bit, where I had started to do much better, until my dad decided I wasn't waking up early enough. My daily schedule started at 9 when I woke up, and made me go back to live with my parents. I begged my mom to let me stay. My mom rarely stood up for me though, so that was a hard no. My friends got my school counselor involved, and CPS was called out because I didn't feel safe at home. My dad has an amazing temper, and sometimes he would get physical, enough that I was always scared of him. I of course was punished for that, even though it wasn't me that called CPS or approached the counselor. I was hospitalized a couple of times. At those family therapy meetings, it was all my fault. Even the therapist conducting the meetings found them entirely unproductive. And then my parents sent me to another Christian therapist. Same situation as the first. Wash and repeat. When I was 18, I moved out. Horrible things happened to me. I have scars literally and figuratively. My mental health took several thousand massive hits. But eventually, I became a mostly functioning adult. I sure try really hard anyway. In 2012, I met my husband. We got married 2 years later. I love this man. He has a lot wrong with him medically, especially in the last 4 years, so I stay home to take care of him. If he can't get a transplant, we're looking at EOL care and options. He's on disability, and we can barely pay bills, let alone have emergency funds. I say all that to show I understand that he's under a lot of stress, and I understand how it feels to be sick all the time and feel like your body is the enemy. Fast forward to today. My mom sent a message to my family's group chat on FBM that had a video of a mind doctor explaining that he doesn't agree with ODD diagnoses and that usually it's a symptom of ADHD, autism spectrum, depression, OCD, or anxiety. Guess who can tick 4 out of 5 of those boxes? Yup, me. Then my mom posted a note under the video saying, "I wish we'd had this information when the twins were younger. It explains a lot. Sorry, my loved, all of you, because we were all affected by this." And, probably irrationally, I was immediately angry. Enough so that I started crying. My husband, 43M, asked what was wrong with me. I started to explain and tried to show him the video, to which he replied, "Why would I want to watch this?" After asking me again, "What is wrong with you?" I tried to explain, but I was having trouble getting my words out. I do this thing where when I'm upset and crying, or trying not to cry, I feel strangled. The words don't want to come out, and I feel like I'm trying to talk while someone has their hands on my throat. I feel like I'm literally choking on my words. My husband has no patience for that. Enough so that I rarely tell him what's wrong with me, because he always reacts like he's angry at me for trying to tell him what I'm upset about. When I do try to tell him about things going on with me, 8 out of 10 times, I end up feeling like I'm the problem. He just stresses me out more when he acts angry or annoyed that I'm upset. It's just easier to deal with my issues myself. But I obviously couldn't hide that I was upset this time, so I was trying to choke out what I was upset about. I managed to get out that I wonder if I would be normal if I had been diagnosed correctly as a kid, instead of under the huge umbrella of ODD. He just looked at me, scowling. He said, "What?" I tried to explain the gist of the video, but he was annoyed because I was struggling to get it out. I then tried to explain why what my mom had said had made me angry, but I could barely get the words out because the face of complete annoyance he had was just making it harder to speak. Then he started yelling at me that he couldn't understand what I was saying while crying and to stop crying. I held my breath for a minute to try to get control over my voice and throat that wanted to seal itself closed. I finally got out, "Just never mind, I'm sorry I said anything." I then got up and off. He made a snide remark or two, but honestly, I was just trying to get myself zen, so ignored it. He didn't check on me and didn't ask to talk about it when I came out of the room. It's like I never said anything or had an emotional moment at all. He did ask what was for supper though, so I guess he moved on from it. So AITA for telling him to just never mind, walking off and ignoring him for a little bit. I know he doesn't feel good, ever. Should I have just been more understanding of him not feeling good and being grumpy? OP is not an AH for being concerned his boyfriend's dismissive behavior, which has strained their relationship. OP is completely justified in her actions. OP's boyfriend is an AH for his toxic behavior, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now jump on to the next story from Able_Jeweler_5211, AITA. For starting off the year by cutting myself out of the group, I have just returned from a meeting with a local business networking organization that I regularly volunteer at. I am an active member of this organization, pay dues, and participate in several subgroups. I believe in the mission, and I personally believe that I have benefited professionally from being part of the organization. This is part of the reason why I feel so conflicted about how to move forward. A little background information. This organization has only a small number of paid staff, so it relies heavily on volunteers. One of the main subgroups I participate in is highly regarded and focuses on new member outreach and member participation. This means I attend almost every event, as well as planning meetings and additional tasks with regard to new members. There is very little direct benefit from participating in this group besides general visibility as you participate in the events and potentially being recognized at the annual dinner if you were one of the top participants. Awards are generally given based on points tallied for actions done, but require old-fashioned turning sheets during monthly meetings. About 6 months ago, I made friends with a new networker in the same industry. I invited her to many events with this organizations, and we became good friends along the way. And not long after she joined, she was specially invited to join another elite subgroup. This group I have always wanted to join. However, typically participating is reserved for people more established in their career and are well-connected. Though I am considered well-connected, I am not in my 40s or 50s. I was shocked as my friend was of similar age to me, 5-ish years older, and was relatively new to both the organization and the industry. To be noted, performing well in this group can result in paid for trip abroad. I was gutted, but I made peace with this after the initial shock wore off and fully supported my friend. She has since decided that she wants to remove herself from the group, as she feels she is not the best fit time and skill-wise. She has not told them yet. I have also made friends with one of the paid staff of the organization, so we are not big on personal outings, but we see each other occasionally after work and 2 to 5 times during the week for professional reasons. She is involved in the organizational side of all of the subgroups. Over the years, she has come to know my work ethic and dedication and my love for leadership roles. During the meeting today, it was announced that the co-chairs would be replaced for the following year. In regards to the outreach and participation group, the current co-chairs are very established and are key figureheads of large organizations. It was announced that 2 of my peers of similar age were chosen to lead the group next year. Both of these individuals have points that look good on paper, but have expressed greatly that they have become busy in life due to both personal and professional reasons. One in particular I rarely see at events and has dropped out of other subgroups we used to be a part of together due to time commitment issues. Both individuals are fairly soft-spoken, as the group is very diverse in age, industry, profession, etc. I was extremely surprised that these 2 were chosen, as I felt I didn't be recognized by an award for my hard work. I have not turned in points for my work. After bringing my shock to my friend, she gave a snide remark, saying it was a point-based decision. This has never been the case, and I was shocked both at the decision and the cold attitude. I have been asked for help in other roles. However, after looking back, all of these are centered around them needing something and are short-lived involvements, like speaking during an event or being a key component of a fundraiser. All of this has made me feel like my help over the past couple of years has been ill-given. I have gone out of my way to fill in the missing pieces. Even a few days ago, I took 4 hours out of my working day to help with an event where no one out of the group could attend to help. Where I want to be happy for those have been chosen for these positions, I am honestly pretty hurt. I feel like things were not clearly communicated with me, and I would have done things differently. Maybe it is my pride holding me back, as I feel I would be best in the position compared to those picked for the roles. I feel like starting the year off with a blank slate and stepping back from the organization just to participate as a member. However, I know that one of the largest events is in January, and they would love all the help they can get. I also feel like I could be the AH for being overly prideful and petty for something that feels like a popularity contest. If I step down before the first of the year, I feel like both the organization and other members of the group will know it's directly related to those elected as co-chairs. AITA. OP is not an AH for deciding to leave the company where his efforts are not being valued. OP's decision to prioritize his well-being and mental peace is 100% justified. On the other hand, OP's colleague is an AH for stealing OP's credits. So, I would rate OP's colleague 2.5 out of 5 and OP 0 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Dog Trainer. But a girl, AITA, for feeling like saying I love you to a coworker on a regular basis is disrespectful to your relationship? My long-term BF, 38M, and I had been together for almost 3 years when he got his current job that he has been at for 2 years now. When he took the job, our relationship was good, but we discussed having boundaries when dealing with female coworkers. Previously, there were issues we were trying to work through. Nothing super big. A friend of his was him, and he stayed friends with this client, but enough to have a conversation. He has a very flirtatious personality, even though he doesn't think so, i.e., giving shoulder massages to female coworkers. At his new job, he got very close with one particular coworker. He initially told me she was a 50-year-old woman. She is my age of 30. He talked about her all the time.
Granted, they started at the same time and did training together, but after training, they only worked 1 day a week together. It is a high-stress job, similar to a police officer, but not. Even on Christmas, I give him a present he wanted, and the first words out of his mouth are, "I can't wait to play this with coworker." It was a dart game he said would be fun for us to play, which is why I bought it. My BF always said he wasn't a social media guy, doesn't have social media account. He does, but his accounts are private with nothing on them. We aren't even Facebook friends. Yet, he has a group chat with this female coworker and another female coworker. That chat is named My, and they communicate regularly. On to the main issue. I get a call from my BF while I am out of state for the weekend working. He is upset. His female best friend coworker is pregnant, saying that it will make his job harder when she goes on maternity leave, but also saying she is always crying and complaining about her BF and saying she is going to leave him. How dumb could she be to get pregnant? This took over the conversation, even though my grandpa passed away that morning. I didn't have a chance to tell him, and he didn't have the thought to ask about him. He was in ICU on a vent for a couple days, and he was aware of this. Later that night, he calls me as he is getting ready to leave work. We end the conversation, but he doesn't hang up. I had him on speaker and was working on my laptop, so I didn't hang up right away. I then overhear the convo between him and the coworker. He is telling her she can go home and he will finish the work. He ends his goodbye with "love you," and I lose my... I was so hurt. Through all the years of knowing him, and we met as co-workers, he has never said that to anyone but me, his mom, or his daughter. He took 6 months to tell me, "I think I love you," when we got in a relationship. He has even made the statement, "Who else would I be saying that to?" When I casually asked once, "Who was that?" after he got off a long call that ended with "love you." A lot of the time, I have to remind him to say it to me. It wasn't something he said often. He claims that I am out of touch, and it is completely normal for co-workers to end conversations with "love you." And because his co-worker isn't bothered by it, it shouldn't matter. But doesn't it matter that it bothers me? I think this is really disrespectful to their significant others, especially when all three are in relationships and in their high 30s. Granted, both girls have told my BF that they want to leave their partners. In my experience, if a girl tells another guy that they are feeling out the response or planting a seed, I would never talk about my BF to a male coworker. But am I crazy? Our relationship has lots of other problems we were working through. I don't feel like a priority. I feel alone constantly. He is not romantic and never takes me on actual dates, etc. So maybe that's why I feel so strongly about this. I started my own business 3 years ago, so I work from home through the week and travel for work on weekends. I don't have traditional coworkers anymore. But before this, I've never had this experience at work. I bartended for 10 plus years at multiple bars and wineries, so I am by no means a prude. Am I the AH for feeling like saying "I love you" to a coworker on a regular basis is disrespectful to your relationship and inappropriate? At this time, the relationship is over. I am just looking for feedback. OP is not an AH for ending her relationship. Rather, her boyfriend is an AH for being unfaithful in the relationship and showing disrespect to OP. OP's actions are completely justified. So, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale and his boyfriend 3.5. Let's now jump on to the last story from Sango. AITA for not wanting me stepchildren father to spend the holidays with us. My fiancé and I have been together for 5 years. We met online through mutual friends. She left the father of her kids and immediately got into a relationship with me. She had 3 kids prior to us getting together. They are 5, 6, and 8 now. We have been caring for them solely with no help from their father for 3 years, 4 for the youngest because he came here first. Their relationship was very toxic when they were together. Manipulation, emotional abuse, narcissism, controlling, etc. Just typical immature toxic bull. And my fiancé was very sheltered and brainwashed. I was raised by my sister and mom, both very independent women, and it floored me when I first heard the way this man spoke to her. She had no friends girl, barely saw her family, never left the house, didn't have any hobbies or full-time work. She would just be home raising the kids and getting treated like garbage. Fast forward to this year. BD got dumped by his girlfriend that he was living with on the West Coast and suddenly decided to move across the country because he couldn't stand being away from his kids anymore. Where was this energy for the past 3 years? IDK. Basically, I let him stay in our home free mon because I felt bad for him and thought it would be good for the kids. And honestly, the break would have been nice for my fiancé and I to finally be able to take some days for ourselves. Worst idea I've ever had. He started small with complaining about our home and dogs and things like that. Then the kids started acting out because he isn't parenting them. He is just playing Xbox in the basement while they are wilding out upstairs. It got to the point where they started misbehaving at school. 6 months of this gradual decline, and my partner and I start to have issues in our relationship. Lack of communication, external stressors, fighting, and we start talking about separating. He finds out about this and immediately traps, literally stands in the doorway so she can't leave, and forces my partner to listen to his rant about how she treats him and how they could try again and move back across the country and make things work as a family, etc. She is emotionally exhausted already, trying to figure things out with me, so she just deadpan stare off and lets him ramble before finally getting sick of him talking about himself when she is going through all this already. Then she blows up telling him she is never going to be in a relationship with him again and tells him to leave that night. He complains but does, and then she tells me about it. I immediately told her that was disrespectful of both of us, especially her, and I'm no longer comfortable with him staying in our home, and she agrees. We tell him, and he blows TF up, showing his true colors, saying a bunch of shit to try and hurt me in specific like, you have nothing to do with my conversations with her, my kids aren't your business, etc. And bringing the kids into it, telling them things they are too young to understand, and telling them to keep it secret between them, which of course they don't, because they are kids and they trust us. Funnily enough, this pushed my partner and I to communicate effectively LOL, and we decide to stay together and work on our relationship and on ourselves as individuals. He finds out she is not going to be moving back across the country and loses his shit sobbing and babbling to her on the phone for hours about how his life is and how nobody loves him and he wants to end it. So, I told him he is no longer allowed in my house at all, and if he wants to see the kids, he can come pick them up. It's been going like that for a month now. And with the holidays approaching, I brought it up, and my fiancé immediately says he is spending it with us. I looked at her like she was crazy. Her thoughts are, it's for the kids, and no one should be alone on holidays. My thoughts are, if he keeps acting however he wants and getting away with it, he's never going to learn a damn thing. Also, I just don't want him in my house. We tried to do it for the kids, and look what happened. AITA? OP is not an AH for trying to maintain the stability of his family. His fiancée is an AH, a big one, for reconciling with her ex-husband, even if it was meant to be only for the kids. This behavior is not acceptable, and OP is justified in his reaction. So, I would rate OP's fiancé 3.5 out of 5, and OP gets nothing. AITA for drifting away from my MIL. I, 22F, got married to my husband, 28M, 2 years ago. We both had met online around 3 years ago. 100% compatible, and we're both neurodivergent. Autism, ADHD, OCD. Anyways, we're both also not very religious people. However, his family was a different religious sect from my family. My family isn't very religious or cares about sects, but his mom was a bit upset back then about him liking me. She had tried to get him to look at her friend's daughter for a marriage proposal after he had told her he liked me and wanted to marry me. Anyways, we eventually got married. I moved out of my country to live with him and his parents in a different country. He had asked me if I wanted to live separately, but since I was already out of sect, I wanted to not come off as worse and thought that it's just the parents, so I might as well live together with them. That's when we started having more issues. First, she subtly enforced his hijab on me. I never wore it before, and everyone including my husband and his family knew about it. By constantly giving me the outfits I had to wear along with a hijab scarf, so I did wear it because, again, didn't want to come off as the bad decision of a wife if I said no. I wore it to please her and her alone, which I shouldn't have done. But again, I'm autistic, so it's hard for me to also communicate, as my main mode of communication, even with my husband, is through Notes app. Then she enrolls me into a weekly sect class to learn the new ways.
and I go along with it too. I also work full-time to support my own family, which my husband was aware of and supports 100%. It was okay for a few weeks, but then it started getting tiring. Then we constantly had issues over her getting disappointed in me and my husband over us sleeping in late. We work remote, and our work starts around 4 to 5 p.m., local time up till 6 to 7 a.m., so then we need the sleep during the day. MIL would complain we didn't spend time with her. She also has a friend circle BTW and has no job. I tried to get her into hobbies like photography and writing, but she also didn't enjoy doing it without me actively being there with her. Then she also tries to compromise about the sleeping situation by saying that her son can sleep in her room again in the morning. She just wants to see her kids around her, but she expected me to be up and sit in the lounge outside both of our rooms. It frustrated me that as soon as my husband and I woke up, I wouldn't even get to hug him or talk to him. He would already be out the door to go sleep in his mom's room. Also, for more context, she's never been openly aggressive with me like shouting, taunting in front of husband, etc. Anyways, at that point, I started feeling worse about the hijab. I'm autistic and I have severe sensory issues. I can't even wear headphones, collared shirts, anything that touches my neck and ears basically. If I do it for a long time, I start crying, have an autistic meltdown, and would need at least 2 days at home to recharge. I thought maybe talking to her about my sensory issues, autism, etc. would make her understand me more and feel happy that I opened up to her. I told her all that, and how I didn't want to wear it anymore, so she just says, "But I would prefer if you wore it. The rest is up to you." Which isn't her directly saying no, but to me, it felt like it the way it's, "But I would prefer," despite hearing my struggles mentally and physically. Either way, after talking to my husband about it several times, I ended up dropping it around a year later. But again, there's constant issues with her complaining me, and husband don't spend enough time with her due to our work hours. Sometimes I wouldn't be in the mood to eat right away at dinner due to my IBS issues as well. And I also feel comfortable eating where people can't see me. I've been like that since way before getting married, and my husband understands that too, but she still forced me to sit at the dining table. Then there would also be constant issues with her and me if I ever used my phone for work or to text my mom, who I only call once a week or two, around her. She would say, after getting married, a girl's priorities should change according to her new family. That would be enough to make me stop using my phone around her. Then once a girl comes over to our house, a guest, to stay over for the night because of some layover flight, we have dinner with her. She goes to the guest room to sleep. Mother-in-law, husband and I are in a different room now, and MIL tells me, "BTW, this girl liked your husband a lot. She wanted to get married to him, but your husband wasn't interested. I didn't tell you this before, so you would not feel insecure." I took that as normal. But twice other times we were both alone and away from my husband. She would go on a long discussion about how she loves that girl. She's social. She gets along with everyone. She goes to university and is a good student. I couldn't go to college due to working early on in life. On and on. So that came off as very comparing to me. Later on, she even had issues with the contraceptive me and my husband decided to use. Birth control pills. She came into our room, saw a medicine bag with those inside it, and asked me who got this. I told her we visited a gynae. She recommended this one. But she forced me to go to her gynae instead, with her in the same room. When we came back, my husband told her, "We're fine with the gynae we go to, and the method we prefer." And they both ended up having a shouting match in the car on the way home. I had frozen up in the front seat next to my husband, and cried because she kept saying, "Why don't you tell your husband that she is a very good doctor? She didn't say anything wrong?" She had later complained to husband, "You shout at me, but you've never done that with your wife before." Then later, once I had messed up some crypto transfer thing, and my husband told me, "You should have asked me how to do it. You know I would always help you." And I cried, because I've always been a hyper-independent person before him, so I felt overwhelmed hearing that from him. The whole day I felt overwhelmed, and he kept trying to cheer me up and make me feel good again. Later that night, I go down to the kitchen after spending the whole day in my room, and my MIL says, "Stop stressing him out with your emotions. It's not a big deal. Husbands and wives fight all the time. You can't be this sensitive." Followed by a few days later, when she's moody and tells my husband it's his responsibility to look after her emotions. Also, she had asked me, "Does your husband do ghusl, act of ablution, after you guys have a sex?" Which shocked me. Then she's also been pretty adamant on buying husband's underwears all the time. I tried to tell her, maybe send me the link where you get them from. I'll get them myself the next time. While also thanking her to not come off as rude, but she still keeps getting them for him. Anyways, at one point, I really needed to move out because there was an issue every 3 to 4 days. My husband was getting stressed because he was acting like a messenger between us and was in a very bad position in his job with toxic coworkers, etc. We had discussed moving out several times her before, so it doesn't come off as a shocker. But she always thought it as something selfish. Once we started looking at apartments, we liked this one place. I tell my husband to share it in the family group chat so they all feel included and say how we want to visit it again and look at the new place with them and hear their thoughts. She completely blew up over that. The issue lasted for another month or two. Anyways, we still ended up moving out, but before moving, because I didn't want to come off as the DIL who drags the son away, I told her we'll visit every day since we live 10 minutes away. I thought maybe just visiting for tea in the evening for an hour would be perfect, but she expected daily visits, at least 4 to 5 hours long, have lunch and dinner with her. At first, I used to go, but then I had too many chores to do at our own house instead, plus freshly moved in, so a lot of unpacking and settling down. I would go every 2 days then. But I still told my husband to go instead. But then it started feeling bad at one point, when he would be over at her house, first thing in the morning, when we had just gotten our first place together. I had dreamed of waking up with him, be calm, have breakfast together, and feel safe, but it felt like MIL was still around all the time. If I ever didn't go, she would make sure to call or text me, asking why, or she would tell my husband, I miss her, she should have come with you as well. And it really stressed me out. Only once, I didn't go for 4 days in a row, because I had completely shut down plus a lot of chores and my own work piling up. And she complained to my husband asking, what's wrong? Is she mad at me? Why isn't she coming? Then when I visit her again, she hugs me and says, you are my daughter too. I want you to come over with him as well. Which on the surface seems very sweet. But if I'm her daughter, then I would have loved it if she understood me like one too. Anyways, she's also had this habit of always demanding full outfit pics of what I wear when we're out, or if we're on a trip without her. We attended a wedding recently, and I had sent her a pic of me and my husband, waist up. And she still asks on call, full outfit pic? Oh, you didn't wear the other one? I've never seen this one before. Please show me when you're back from the trip. And something inside me just snapped that day. We were on a trip for our 2nd anniversary, so it triggered me that she was calling daily. I stopped texting plus calling her, but when my husband called her, I would talk enthusiastically on the calls every day, every 2 days. But when he left for a quick 2-day trip from that vacation place for a work thing, she texts me, I haven't talked with her, it's unlike me, etc., etc. I told her I had just talked with her on call with her son 2 days back, and she just says, but it's nice to also have you text me personally. I remember I broke down and cried a lot the entire night and lost my appetite. I further didn't call or text her again because it further made me push her away more. Then a day later, my mom calls me and asks me if everything's okay with my MIL, and I say, yeah, why? I never tell my mom about these issues. And she tells me she found it weird that when my MIL called her a month or 2 back, she said, your daughter is very introverted, she always cages herself, and my husband was asking if we can do something that would make up for whatever she lacked from a father in her childhood to help her grow. Which again is a very weird thing to say, because I've been self-sufficient since I was 16, plus supporting my family of 5, all on my own. I tell her it's fine, nothing's wrong. I tell my husband about this because it was a WTF thing for me. He says that's weird, why would she say that? Then he asks if we can call my mom and ask her again, in case there was a misunderstanding. I said fine. We call her, she said it did happen, but then also advises us to not stress, cover each other up in front of other people, not argue with each other, and ruin our relationship over a third person, set boundaries, live a calm life, etc., etc. He recorded the call and sent it to his mom, who still denied whatever she said, and said it's a toxic, unhealthy mindset my mom has about setting boundaries, plus no family obligation, which she never said in that way, because till this day, my mom is very involved with her in-laws. We had a flight back home, our car was at their house, plugged on charge, so we get a taxi from the airport to go to their house. Husband went in to say hi to the parents. It was also 3 a.m. I told him I'll meet them in a day or two. I needed to unwind, and I know she would have put me on the spot to talk about everything right then and there. 40 to 45 minutes later, he comes out with his mom, and she hugs. And I feel ambushed. I can't even smile. I hug her back, but I can't talk. I sit back in the car. On the way back, he's all stressed out and in a bad mood. I'm crying. For the first time in 2 years, he got mad at me and said, "Can you stop making my life a living hell and just get along with her?" I just froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't leave the car when we arrived back at our apartment. I felt like I wasn't in my own body. It was weird, and I was still processing how I was happy that we had never in our life ever argued, disagreed, or let alone fought before. Now we're doing it all over a third person, not even over personal issues with each other. We're going to start couples therapy now. We were supposed to do family therapy with MIL, but I told him I can't do it because then it'll feel like I'm on one side and you and your mom are on a different team. Or he'll also feel pressured to either side with his mom or his wife, which I understand from his perspective. Plus, we both have severe issues with setting boundaries and easily being guilt-tripped, so we needed couples therapy for that first to at least work on our issues first and be able to represent a united front. I just need to know if I've done anything wrong or if I could have done things differently in any way which would have completely avoided this situation at hand. I'm constantly worried about my marriage falling apart and not being able to do anything about it, and also worried about having resentment for my husband as an extension of resentment towards my MIL. OP is not an AH, rather her toxic mother-in-law is an AH for continuously invading her privacy, and her husband is also an AH for not supporting her. OP is completely justified for setting her boundaries. As for scores, I would rate OP's mother-in-law 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now move on to the next story from an amazing_metal_1314. AITA for telling my roommate that she is not my responsibility and I don't owe her anything. I became roommates in a 3x2 apartment with some previous friends. I will refer to them as Amelia, 20F, and Isabella, 21F. For the past 3 months, I have been screwed over multiple times. A $125 Sam's Club visit that neither paid me back for, borrowing cash to go out, and never being paid back for, breaking my makeup when borrowed, not returning clothes that they have borrowed. The one that irks me the most is the amount I drive them around. They don't have cars, and I've driven Amelia to class twice a week for a whole semester, and driven them home for breaks, grocery store visits, home from night outs, and other people's houses. I drive them around constantly. They have never offered me gas money. Now I know I should ask for it. And that's on me. My therapist tells me all the time, here's where the problem started, and I may be the in my baby steps, attempt to start setting boundaries and saying no. I stopped offering to drive them places or let them use my things when they would bait me to allow them to instead of asking. I bring another friend to the grocery store, and she asks and always buys me coffee as payment. I recently started going with her and waiting for my roommates to ask me. Isabella has begun to ask when she needs to go, and I only offer to bring them to the grocery store that is a 5-minute drive away. They don't give me gas money, so we aren't going far or to places where they need my membership card to check out. Thus, they want to do it together, and I end with the tab. Amelia isn't available when Isabella and I are available. For some reason, she won't allow us to find some compromise. This has happened twice now, and we went without her. Isabella offered to get the things Amelia needed, and I did not because Amelia was the one who had never even tried to pay me back. She has made a massive deal about how her other friend had to bring her. She then asked me if she could drive my car to the grocery store when she couldn't go with us. And I said hell no, which upset her, and apologized for being crass, but she was out of line for even asking. This has been boiling and is now bubbling over today. About a week ago, Amelia was baiting me to let her use my shampoo and conditioner, going on and on about how expensive shampoo and conditioner are and how she's so broke. I didn't bite. She continued for the next couple of days, and I didn't say she could use mine, and I put them in my room. My shampoo is costly, and I use it sparingly because of that. I wash my hair once a week, and my roommate washes hers daily. I had a gut feeling that after she borrowed my lotion until it was gone, she would do the same to my shampoo and conditioner. She finally outright asked me, and I said no. She got upset and didn't talk to me for a day or two. This is how she would guilt me into letting her use my stuff. She would always talk about how lucky I am to have the things I have. Most of my clothes, makeup, and shoes have been purchased by myself. She talks about her upbringing and how she could never afford the things that I have. A single mother raised me and was by no means rich and barely lower middle class. I got a job when I was 15 and devoted much more time than I should have as a young teen to work since then. I've had multiple jobs at once and insane hours because I like nice things. I paid for pretty much everything I have except for my car. I am very grateful for my car, and that's why I don't have a problem with taking time out of my day to drive people around. I know that it is a luxury. I drive coworkers home, my other friends to work, etc. Everyone besides my roommates either offers gas money or some sort of payment through food or drinks. I rarely take the gas money. Their offering is enough for me. So, here's where the confrontation started. I was doing my laundry, and she asked me why I was using her detergent purchased by ME when we went to Sam's Club. It set me over my limit, and I listed all the shared in our apartment that was purchased by me. They use it, including but not limited to toilet paper, paper towels, laundry and dish detergent, trash bags, candles and wax melters, the vacuum, and all the condiments in the apartment. She threw her other friend, having to drive her to the grocery store, the length of my showers, how loud I am going into my room after I'm off work, and anything she could say to and moan. That's when I told her she could go and buy her and I wasn't going to share anything of mine with her. I told her how much money she owed me from borrowing it. I told her she needed to give me the pillows I purchased when we went on that Sam's Club trip, and she needed to provide me with anything she had ever borrowed from me. Amelia said that because we are roommates, I'm supposed to do all this stuff. I told her that her going to the grocery store was not my problem, and I didn't owe her anything, so she could stop using my. She said that I was a raging and arrogant. Our other roommate is staying out of it, but I overheard them talking when they didn't realize I was home. I've asked some of my friends, and they don't think I'm the. But mutual friends said that I should be the one to drive her places, and sharing stuff is all a part of being roommates. And when I don't offer to bring them when I'm going with my other friend is rude. So, AITA, is this something I should try to return from? We don't cross paths with busy class schedules and how much I work. Edit to the why are you still roommates with them or the advice to move out entirely? We live in a college apartment, meaning all of our leases are to our individual rooms, and it's an 11-month lease. Total scam. But I live in a college town, and that's how most, if not all, the apartment housing is around my college. If I could get out of it, I definitely would. I talked to my leasing office, but they said to break the lease would be 2 months' rent, and that's just insane. I'd rather have a tense living situation than be out $2,000.
OP is not an H for setting her boundaries. Her roommates, Amelia and Isabella, are AHs for taking advantage of her. OP is clear in her demands. She is not rude or selfish for demanding her borrowed things back. So I would rate OP 0, and OP's roommates 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Short and Skinny.
AITA, for getting a woman at the rental office fired?
I, 26F, don't have a green thumb. Like I'm so bad at growing indoor plants, but I figured maybe I can start out with keeping weeds like dandelions because they're resilient and won't die on me, and you can eat them. So, there are plenty of dandelion weeds scattered throughout the grounds of my apartment complex, and I figured I'd go to the office and get permission to scoop up one of the weeds. So, I did. And the lady was very matter-of-factly like, no, that is, company name, property. I'm autistic, so I ask a lot of clarifying questions that can be seen as argumentative, but I wasn't trying to be. I was just trying to understand the full extent of her reasoning, because to me they already have the gardeners pull the weeds anyways. And if there's a reason why maybe they prefer the gardeners pull the weeds rather than tenants like me, because that information can help future decision-making on related matters, and is also something I can relay to my neighbors, which I have a good relationship with. So like, if I see one of them doing the same thing, I can warn them. And she seemed to be irritated when I asked questions, never really answered them and was like, it's property, so no, that's the only reason you need. And I'm like, okay, got it. Which would have been fine if I didn't already uproot one from between the sidewalk and the cobblestone of the turnabout in front of the mailboxes. That was my bad for assuming she'd say yes. If I was going to ask permission anyways, I should have just waited until after she gave me the go-ahead. So, the honest thing to do was to tell her what I did, which I did, and I apologized, and showed her the uprooted dandelion, which was the length of my hand roots and all. She told me to stay there, and that I was in trouble, and so, I did. And I was apologizing, and I felt so bad. I even offered to put it back, but she said no. So I'm standing there with an uprooted dandelion in my hand, and she's calling other people, telling them what I did, and whether or not to deduct that from my rent costs, etc. And this wasn't mature of me, but I started to tear up. I wasn't crying, I was just tearing up due to mild distress. So now she's telling them on the phone that I'm crying and making a scene, and I was trying not to, and I asked if I could use the bathroom and wipe my face, and she said no. and I'm not making any noise. I'm just standing there and making sniffing noises. This older man comes in, and I guess he was picking up mail from the office, and asked what was going on. And I told him because she couldn't, because she was on the phone. And he stood there with me. He had to have been in his 50s. When she got off the phone, he started arguing with her, telling her to let me go, and it kind of escalated from there. And he started offering money to make up for it. I was stuck there for like 30 minutes with her and this guy, and people were coming in and out of the office, as the other receptionist was helping them watching it all go down. I don't know how it ended up escalating this far, but the guy who owned the rental office, Mr. H, stopped by because someone let him know what was happening, and he asked me what happened, and I was kind of a coward in that moment, and asked the lady to explain which was a big mistake. She literally was telling him I vandalized the property and ripped out flowers, but made it seem like I went for the display flowers, like the fancy ones that they grew in front of the sign. Mr. H asked to see it, and when I showed him the dandelion weed, he looked really upset, but he told me that it was fine if I wanted to pull the weeds, as long as they weren't the display flowers. I explained to him that I wouldn't want to pull the display flowers because I specifically took the dandelions because they were easy to take care of, and I showed him some inspiration pictures and posts I saved of other people who took care of dandelions as indoor plants to make my intentions clear. I told him the fancier flowers are extremely hard for me to grow, and that there were plenty being sold at Lowe's that I could buy instead of plucking theirs.
Mr. H said he understood and thanked me for clarifying, but then the lady told me that wasn't what I told her. And she's right. I did fail to fully explain what my intentions were. I simply just asked her if I could have one of the dandelion weeds, but then the older man from before chimed in and told her that it shouldn't matter because they're just weeds, and he seemed really upset on my behalf. He gave me his name and his phone number, and told me if anyone bothers me to let him know because he has daughters, and he wouldn't let anyone talk to his daughters the way she talked to me, and he refused to leave until Mr. H let me go, which he did. And the man's wife was outside waiting, wondering what happened, and I told her what happened, and she said the same thing and gave me her phone number too. Looking back, I think because of my stature and baby face, they thought I was a teenager. I'm 5 feet tall and 80 pounds into my adulthood because I was heavily stressed, sleep-deprived, and malnourished growing up. And as an adult, much of my musculature has atrophied for reasons outside of my control. And some people misconstrue my appearance as being younger. But I mentioned that because when I relayed the story to my roommate, they said the couple wouldn't have made a big deal if they knew I was 26. So that, amongst other factors, makes me think the escalation of the situation was due to my negligence. This all happened last week, and I got a voicemail from the office with an apology on her behalf, and that she was terminated from employment, along with a link to an article about my rights as a tenant that also went over rules, etc. I feel so horrible. I'm genuinely panicking right now. I told my dad and he said it's not my fault, but my roommate said I could have prevented it, which I agree with. AITA, TL. Dar. I took a dandelion weed from my apartment grounds to grow indoors, but faced backlash from the office manager, who said I committed an act of vandalism. The situation escalated. An older man intervened, and the property owner later clarified it was fine to take weeds. The manager was fired, and now I'm guilty and responsible for the outcome.
OP is not an AH. Rather, she is very clear and honest in her dealings with the receptionist. That rental office receptionist is an AH for blaming OP and exaggerating things about her, causing OP distress. So, I would rate her 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing.
AITA for thinking of breaking up with my GF. I, 21M, and my GF, 21F, have been dating for 2+ years. However, I'm debating on breaking up with her. Sorry, this is long. We're both in the end stages of undergrad. I'm in the co-op program. I work full-time every other semester. I could work anywhere in the country. Because of this, we argue a lot about my placements. She's forced me to only apply to jobs close by, thus limiting my scope. I applied to every job I wanted to, regardless of distance, but kept that within 2.5 hours. Since we started dating, and aside from one co-op placement and vacations and things, we've been together almost every day. My GF works a lot, but spends nearly all her money, and she has no savings. She's been pretty much breaking for the last 1.5 years, but spends all her money on food and toys for her 2 cats and maxes out her credit card every month. She pays it off, which is good. I don't work as much as she does, partially because I don't want to, scold me all you want, and I prioritize my classes. I don't like spending money on things, as I'm actively saving for a car or house, haven't decided yet. Our families pay for our education, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Where it differs is my girlfriend pays her rent for her place, and my parents pay for mine. My GF lives full-time in the city we go to for school. I don't because I move around every other semester. Since January, my GF has been shorter with me, demanding, and a little distanced from me. In the summer, I went home, 45 minutes away, because my lease ended and my classes were remote. Here's examples of what we went through. GF wanted to buy cat food. About 100 cans plus lots of raw food sit untouched in her closet. I asked her why, and she responded with, "Don't question me." In an angry tone, got upset every time I asked her when she'd be able to pay me back for even a portion of the $1.2 thousand I lent her for emergency surgery for one of the cats too. Brought a dog. She walks back to the house for a bath without letting me know. Texted her roommate about it but not me, and demanded that I clean the bathroom up. Shower curtain fell, and flower pots broke on the floor. I planned on cleaning it up, but I wasn't aware they were coming. Proceeded to scold me, and told me to hurry up in the bathroom. 2 of her friends and roommate witnessed this. I was told this after by the roommate that my GF's friends felt bad for me in that situation, and it was unfair of her 3. Got mad at me for telling her the shower curtain fell and immediately blamed me 4. Told me when I applied to my most recent co-op placement, which I'm currently on, that she could break up with me if I get a job that's not in the city we go to school in or the neighboring city. Last week we were out driving, and she was, may not be the right word, micromanaging my driving, telling me to turn this or that way, to slow down or speed up, or where to park. I told her she doesn't need to micromanage. She replied, "I'm not micromanaging. You don't need to get so butthurt about everything." She doesn't seem to care about my hobbies and interests at all. Never encourages me or supports me. I've put music things on a list of Christmas gift ideas, and she straight up said, "You know." Doesn't seem to support my accomplishments except every now and then. If I'm telling her something, same with her roommate, and she isn't interested, she'll say, "Yeah, I don't care about it anymore," while you're mid-sentence. She puts down my program saying, being in an BA honors program isn't as good as a B.SC, which is her program, and that even though my grades are higher, it's only because they're art, humanities classes. She also doesn't care to understand what my co-op jobs are about, which doesn't make me feel good. This has been emotionally exhausting at times and making me feel conflicted if breaking up with her would be the best decision. We did break up for a short time in the summer too, and it was a mess. I love her dearly, and I enjoy being with her in the good times. I've spent nights crying over this. Sometimes I feel guilty for feeling this way and dealing with it internally. Sometimes I think I'm wrong because of how happy she is and what we've had together. AITA for thinking this way?
OP is not an AH for setting financial boundaries with his girlfriend. OP's decision to end his relationship is completely justified. OP's girlfriend is an AH for not being supportive and concerned. OP did nothing wrong by prioritizing his well-being. So I would rate OP 0 and OP's girlfriend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from basic_dumpling. AITA for wanting to reach out to my ex's PO after he won't stop harassing me and defaming me on his FB. I, 25F, and my ex, 35M, broke up 4 months ago due to domestic violence, mental and physical abuse, manipulation, disrespect, narcissistic and controlling behaviors. We met at work over a year ago and started dating a month later when we connected so well and trauma bonded. He was staying with a friend in his basement and was on probation for a previous domestic violence charge against his ex. He claimed that he had no choice but to choke her out after she had a schizophrenic episode and beat him within an inch of death, and she pressed charges against him and he's on probation for the next 3 years. At the time, I didn't question anything and felt so terrible and empathetic toward him and didn't push for more answers, though he claimed to have pictures of his broken ribs yet never showed me. He pretty much moved in with me within weeks of dating and just never left my apartment. I was struggling financially at the time, living in a less than 500 square feet 1-bedroom apartment with my dog and him. It was rough. I was not comfortable with him staying over pretty much every night, but I didn't want to say anything because of my people-pleasing tendencies. At first, everything was amazing. He cooked for me, took me on dates, was very affectionate and lovey-dovey. But over time, he became critical and controlling over me. He would berate me whenever I did something wrong and made me feel small,
bragging about how he's had 10 years on me and was much smarter and knowledgeable in general. This made me feel about myself because my abusive dad had done the same thing to me for decades. We started having fights regularly. Wherever we fought or argued, I would immediately shut down and start crying and not talk for hours at a time. Later found out this is a trauma response due to abuse, and he would continue lashing out at me for hours on end, screaming at me, calling me names, and would go as far as blocking the exit while filming me, taking my phone so I couldn't talk to anyone, and physically restrict me from leaving my apartment. This really triggered me due to my past and the sexual assault experiences, and he was aware of this, but used them against me. I tolerated this for months, had him convince me that it was my fault for not knowing how to handle my emotions, and would just shut down, and even diagnosed me with autism, BPD, and bipolar. I really believed him since I did research on my own, and matched pretty much all the criteria, and was letting him make me think that I was more mentally unstable than I already was. Fast forward, I broke my lease at my last place due to unlivable situations, horrible neighbor, unsafe surroundings, etc., and moved into my current place in May, which is much nicer and bigger. He moved into with me without asking, which I was hesitant because I am very independent and introverted and needed my personal space, but again, didn't say anything. Fast forward, the fights continued and had gotten worse. We would scream and yell at each other for hours on a weekly basis, which ended with me leaving my apartment for a drive to calm my head. I started self-harming again and even attempted to take my life twice because of the unbearable pain I felt when I was with him. I freaked out at every notification on my phone, anxious every time he spoke to me, was constantly on edge and scared. The final straw came mid-July, when he had hit me when we got into a fight. I immediately started bawling and went to sit in a corner freaking out and having a meltdown. He lashed out at me for hours after, and we argued until 2 a.m, where I called his roommate to pick him up because I couldn't have him in my apartment anymore since I felt unsafe. He said I had finalized our breakup and it was all my fault, and that he doesn't hate anyone but hates me and wishes that I would burn in hell. He got his stuff a couple days later while bombarding me with messages and voicemails, going between apologizing to blaming me for everything. I went back and forth between blocking and unblocking him, not knowing what to do. But did block him at last few days after the breakup and started working on healing. However, that was not the end. I got a message request on FB from someone I didn't know. I opened it, and my heart instantly sank when I saw the mention of his name. It was his new friend who reached out to me for advice and help, as she's been seeing him for a couple months, and that he had been lashing out at her, making her feel suicidal, and started taking medication and seeking professional help. I told her to get away as soon as she can as he is bad news, and we confided in each other for a few days. She broke things off with him a week later, which made him lash out again on her, and made another email to harass me once again. He told me that he has not moved on for the whole 4 months, still loves me, wants me to be his wife and mother of his kids, and wants another chance, and haven't been able to sleep because I'm not there. When I hit him with something along the lines of, I know he proposed to another woman, and they had been intimate, he flipped the switch again. He called me controlling, delusional, toxic, abusive, and that none of that had ever happened, and if I'd just talked to him instead of everyone else, we'd still be together. I gave him a final warning to leave me alone, and that I was happier without him. Last Saturday, I finally gathered the courage to go through my apartment and packed all his belongings left into huge trash bags and had a friend of mine to drop them off. His roommate told him that my friend, male, dropped off his stuff, which led to him creating another email, harassed me even more, asking for another chance, asked if he's my new boyfriend, begged me to talk to him for the last time. I was the worst person he's ever met. I was toxic and an etc. I blocked him after receiving 120 plus emails within 12 hours and ended up with receiving flowers that he had delivered to my apartment. I did not respond to any of this and was committed to cutting off all communications once again. Came to work today and was informed by a coworker of mine who's friends with him on Facebook and saw that he had made 30 plus posts talking about me and my friends. I recorded the posts, 3+ minute long clip, and saved it as evidence. The posts twisted the stories completely,
giving out details and information that I had shared with him that were personal and very sensitive. I don't know what to do at this point. I really don't want to file for a restraining order as he's already in trouble with the law, but I want this behavior to stop once and for all. This has and still is taking a huge toll on my mental and even physical health. I want to go to his probation officer and inform her of what's been going on, but I have no way of contacting her or even know who she is. Please be kind. I'm not sure what to do. Thanks for reading. Edit.
We were engaged at 4 months. I felt pressured into saying yes, though my mom and friends were against it. We only dated for 10 months, and he had not met most of my friends since I was pretty much isolated during the relationship. He later said that I forced him into proposing to me, and that I was abusive towards him where he couldn't say no. I only hung out with my friends twice in 10 months because he would get upset when I even made plans or talked to my friends without informing him. OP is not an AH for protecting her well-being from her toxic and abusive ex. OP's decision to block and go no contact with him is 100% justified. OP's ex is an AH for continuously harassing and defaming her. So, I would rate OP's ex 4 out of 5, and OP gets 0 on the AH scale.
Let's now jump on to the next story from No-Independent, 2062. AITA after my mother kicked me out and is now asking me to pay her bills?
I am a 24F who just moved out and started living on my own with my 26M fiancé, who I have been with for nearly 3 years at this point. The main reason we moved out was because my mother essentially kicked me out of her house after I stood up to her for having enough of her BS. My mother has always been a very emotionally unstable person, and from the moment I began being able to think for myself, we have gotten into a lot of arguments. Even before I was with my fiancé, if I had a close friend and spent a lot of time with them at their house, my mother would have a meltdown saying I loved the friend and their parents more than her. It was always difficult to navigate around her, and I began realizing I had severe people-pleasing tendencies from my childhood, because essentially if I said no, she would fly into a rage. Not only that, but I was stayed by my stepfather when I was about 12 years old, and my mother stayed with him until I was 24. They recently split up for reasons not pertaining to me. My mother gaslit me for years, not believing me and always bringing it up at random times. That sent me into a complete mental breakdown, but she never really cared because to her, she was hurting more, and I was. In her words, it hurt more to stay with him than it was for me to have to live with my abuser for nearly half of my life. There was even a time my mother straight up punched me in my face after discovering I had self-harm scars and tried dragging me to church because I must have a demon in me and be possessed. These are just a few instances of her behavior towards me. But everything got worse once I entered my relationship with my now partner. My fiancé and I are both pagans and don't conform to traditional Christianity, which my mother hates. She believes that my boyfriend is the main reason for this and that he has turned me against God, but I have been non-religious for years. They have gotten into one-sided screaming arguments where my mother would yell at him about being disrespectful and stealing her daughter, where my boyfriend on most ends would try to calmly explain situations until he spoke up for himself, which often got him kicked out of my house, or my mother would end up leaving, saying she never wanted to see him again. There have been many instances of my mother saying, I loved my boyfriend more than her. Even though I explained to her multiple times, it's a different kind of love and they cannot be compared. Even when my family was going through a rough time financially and we had no groceries at the house, my fiancé bought me a food stash to keep in my room for emergencies. One weekend when I wasn't home, my mother went through my room, found my food stash, and proceeded to get angry that I was being taken care of essentially, calling me and yelling at me, my boyfriend and his parents, for ensuring I was being fed. I never realized it until I got with my fiancé, but I had a severe eating disorder due to my mother. I thought eating once a day was normal, and weighed about 80 pounds. I never got hungry, never had an appetite, and that was due to my body suppressing my hunger growing up. My mother has even tried to turn my family against my boyfriend, and I stating that he is extremely controlling and dominating towards me, stating things like my cousins who I grew up with from babies disliked my new personality, and my fiancé, also stating my aunts thought I was also disrespectful. But when I asked them about this myself, they said they've never said those things. Basically, I have been put in a spot where I feel very estranged from all my family because of my mother spreading most times lies about me and my fiancé. I have tried to explain this to her, and she went and told my aunts and family that I wanted nothing to do with them, which was so far from the truth, because I love my family very much, but I'm not willing to put my mental health in jeopardy again. So now to the story. My mother, after leaving my stepfather, was unable to find any work in our country due to its economy. I was also unemployed at the time, as I was a recent graduate with no experience, and no one wanted to hire me due to that. My mother got a job as a babysitter abroad, and decided to take it. A week before she was going to leave for her job, I was able to secure a well-paying position at a company. However, when I told my mother the salary, she was first pleased and expected me to pick up a few bills, and I agreed, as at the time I thought it would only be 1 or 2 while also taking care of the house while she was gone for nearly 8 months. Only to soon realize as she left, she placed all the bills into my hands, always complaining she had no money, which was a lie, as I knew she was making much more than I was due to it being a foreign currency, and her telling me the exact amount before she left. As soon as she would leave, a nightmare would ensue. I had asked my fiancé to move in with me into my mother's house for protection and safety. My mother was fully aware of this, and on board with it. However, my fiancé would go home on weekends, and then I would invite one of my friends to stay over, once again for safety. The country I live in isn't very safe, and I have already been held at gunpoint and robbed, so I have a lot of anxiety over those things. My house has a security system with cameras that my mother had synced to her cell phone. Even though I would tell her, and she knew who my friend was, who was staying with me, I would get a phone call every night asking questions like, "Who is that on the camera? Whose car is that? Why is there a mat in the porch that has been misplaced?" etc. It became very exhausting constantly getting phone calls, including when I'm working to answer questions that don't need explaining. I had a small get-together on my birthday at the house, and the entire night I was bombarded with calls, even though she knew about this get-together before it happened. In my country, it's currently rainy season, and it storms and rains nearly every other day. The house's roof began to leak, and my fiancé and I decided to move things around, as the leak was occurring by our freezer in the house and causing the plug to get wet and spark the wires in the house. I first consulted with my mother that we were moving things due to the leak, and she even agreed it would be best. However, once things were moved about, she began to argue on why certain things were the way it was, and demanded that we put the house exactly how she wants it done. I told her that my fiancé had gone home for the weekend, and we wouldn't be able to move it until he comes back. She didn't like that response and immediately decided to call my aunts, who randomly showed up in front of the house, banging on the door, insisting to be let in, saying things like, "My mother is crying," and such things as how I had left her house in a mess. This honestly left me in shock, and when my aunts inspected the house, they were genuinely confused on my mother's reaction. But they told me to endure, as this was just how my mother was, and I had to put up with her because she is my mother. From that instance, I had constant anxiety, whether it be through the cameras of my mother, watching my every motion. She even called me on a public holiday to ask why I wasn't working and I was at home, or her just straight up sending people to the house without warning. It was nearly unbearable, and my fiancé even saw the physical toll it began taking on me, where I would be constantly stressed about one thing being out of place, in case my mother would send my siblings or family to the house, where she would then ask them to video call and go inspecting each room for quality assurance. The night I had enough was when my mother called me in a group call with my mother-in-law, where she then began berating me, telling me that I didn't know how things work, and even at one point called my fiancé's mother illiterate. Hearing this, my fiancé got visibly upset and told my mother, "Don't call my mother illiterate." When my mother heard my fiancé's voice on the line, she began yelling at him, saying it was a private conversation, and he is so disrespectful for chiming in. But I told my mother that my fiancé is a part of my life, and his mother is also a part of this conversation, and he does have a right to listen. The argument got to the point where I told my mother I had received my first paycheck, and I didn't inform her because I knew from the moment I told her I received money she would ask for it, and I was correct in my assumption, as only a few weeks prior, she told me how I was going to spend my first paycheck on her house that wasn't even mine, as she doesn't have any money. I then told her, "I am paying the bills out of a courtesy for you because you're my mother and I love you. But this isn't my responsibility. I could easily have gone and rented instead of doing this. But I care for you, so I'm here, paying the bills, taking care of the upkeep of a house."
After hearing this, she took it as a personal insult and proceeded to tell me that she doesn't want me doing her any favors and that I can get out of her house and she will get someone else to take care of it.
Even furthermore, a few weeks after that argument while I wasn't home, she sent my aunts to the house without my knowing to inspect and clean it. The only way I knew was by the alarm system at the house going off. After that incident, I knew I wanted no more. No more anxiety, no more manipulation, and no more damage to my mental health. After that, my fiancé and I moved out. Now she is calling me begging to move back into the house and still sending me bills to pay for her, even though I now have my own bills to pay. I was even courteous enough to pay her bills on top of mine last month, but now I think she thinks this is the norm, and I should support 2 households, even though my mother is making more than me. But she states she is saving up for her papers and citizenship, therefore her needs are more important than mine, I suppose. So please tell me, AITA? Because I do feel a deep sense of sadness in me, and I can't speak to anyone older than me about this, as my country has a very honor your parents, no matter how abusive they are, mindset, and that renting is dead money, so it's better to endure and save for a house. My aunts even told me to forget and to move on, that my mother stayed with my abuser for years, and let the past be the past, so I know speaking to them about leaving my mother high and dry to deal with her own problems will go on deaf ears, and I will be forced to hear the honor thy mother and thy father line until the day I probably die from my own anxiety. I know that my mother is taking advantage of me, as she is making the funds to pay her own bills, but prefers to save up for her citizenship rather than deal with her own bills and mistakes, and moving back home isn't the answer, because now that I've moved out, I've never been happier in my life, and I realize I've been suffering with depression and anxiety for years, due to the environment my mother put me in. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her well-being. OP's mother is an AH for emotionally abusing and manipulating her throughout her life. OP's decision to set boundaries from her toxic mother is 100% justified, so I would rate OP's mother 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for getting mad that my BF who shared pictures of my vibrator and tampon on social media. So, firstly, I want to point out that this is not a one-time thing. He has a group chat community space where he shares pics and videos about stuff he's encountered in Canada. He's from Ukraine. First thing he ever shared that I told him not to was a pic of my ADHD meds bottle with my full name and dosage, address of my pharmacy and phone number. Second thing was a picture of my vibrator. As a joke, he assures me, the post saying he'd found a strange microphone, and how sad it is his GF can't sing because her microphone doesn't seem to work. He's also shared photos of the front of the outside of our apartment, street name and number included. But the most recent oversharing has been due to a toxic shock scare. Now to be clear, in my 31 years of life on this planet, I've never once lost a tampon up there, but we'd bumped ugliest early in the morning one day, and I had, wrongfully, assumed if I had one in there, he had have felt it before diving in. Apparently not, and it got pushed up to the back. It was 3 days later that I noticed I was bleeding through tampons more quickly than usual, and wondered why I needed to change them so frequently. I had a sneaking suspicion that I might have had one in previously, so I gathered the gall to check more thoroughly, and found that the tampon from day 1 of period was camping in my cookie like this was a Call of Duty match. I took it out, thought, oh thank God I found that, realized how it had gotten so far back there, and then promptly ran to the bedroom to tell him he needs to be careful. He assumed at first that I said to be more careful because it's icky, to which I told him, no, be careful because I could die, and explained toxic shock to him. Now, he's a fairly anxious guy, and so when I was looking up symptoms of toxic shock and sharing them with him, he was pretty stressed out, though I did assure him that if anything was going to happen, it'd be quick, and so if I'm not currently turning inside out, everything's going fine so far. A few days afterwards, he sheepishly told me that he told his mom about it because he was so anxious and that she gave some advice. Advice he didn't share with me until a few days later, but nonetheless. He didn't tell her how it happened, but asked if she'd ever had a tampon in for 3 days because his GF did and he was worried. She apparently told him to tell me to rinse with chamomile tea, which he only told me in this conversation. I reacted pretty badly because I simply want to know peace and not have to worry that random women in Ukraine are being kept up to date on details about my meds, my vagina, or the consistency of my. If I wanted someone to know about this, it'd be my thing to share with them. After thing vibrator thing, the meds thing, the potential doxing thing, and a few other oversharing he's done about me to other women, I got really angry. Now I won't pretend that I'm just a girl ooh woo. I know I can be pretty spooky when I'm angry, and I did yell and ask him, "What the f is wrong with you? How am I even having to tell you not to do this? Jesus Christ, are you 9 years old?" The thing is, he also told his sister, and a girl he sent memes back and forth with online for a few years. He didn't tell me this at the end of October when he told me that he'd told his mom, but instead today when he opened social media while we were watching a movie. So basically, when I overreacted to him telling me that he told his mom, he stopped and thought, "Oh."
I also told my sister and my online friend, if my GF didn't like me telling my mom, she'll hate that, so I won't tell her that I told them too. And decided to just say nothing because, in his words, being honest is a mistake. It would be one thing if he'd given the full story, of basically saying, "I plunged a tampon to the Mariana's Trench of my girlfriend's bag, and now I'm worried she's going to get toxic shock and die. Has anything like this ever happened to you? And did you end up being okay?" No, it's just, yeah, she left a bloody gauze chunk up there for 3 days. Yucky. Have you ever had this happen, or are you a normal sanitary person?
Today after finding out, I got silent, to which he responded, "Well, do it already. Let it out. I'm a monster, so out with it, I already know it's coming," which set me off. Because how is he going to do this, and then act indignant that I'm frustrated with him? I ended up yelling a while and calling him a gossipy and a moron. Did I overreact? Or am I right to expect to not have these kinds of details about my health life shared with people I don't know, without my knowledge or consent? The bright side is that this was the final straw to push me back into having a regular therapist, because I need to have someone to whom I can tell my frustrations without making my friends and family hate him. I'm actively not trying to poison any wells, and so I go out of my way to not call up my friends to put him on blast a courtesy I wish he was capable of showing me. OP is not an AH. Rather, her boyfriend is an AH for violating her privacy, which unethical and cannot be justified at any rate. There must be no compromise on boundaries. OP did a wonderful job by setting boundaries for her privacy and overall well-being. As for scores, I would rate
OP's boyfriend 3.5 out of 5, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from sufficient_variety 56.
AITA for leaving my ex-girlfriend with barely anything. I, 34M, and X, 33F, broke up around a month ago. We'd been together for 9 years. She hasn't worked for the last 7 of those 9 years. The reason is because she didn't have to. Call me a mug if you want, but I'm very financially stable and I loved her. I was happy to give her everything she needed and wanted, and she'd expressed that she didn't want to work anymore, so that's what we did, and I was happy to do so. Genuinely thought I'd found the one, so didn't think it would ever be an issue. She broke things off with me. It was very out of the blue and devastating to me, I'll be honest. Calm as the breakup was, she didn't seem particularly bothered when she told me she didn't love me anymore. That was the reason she wanted to split. She'd fallen out of love with me. I was obviously upset and honestly shocked. I asked if I'd done anything wrong. She said no, that she'd just fallen out of love with me. And it just hit me like, okay, this is happening. There's nothing I can do about it. But I'm also not going to grovel and beg her to stay. She's clearly made up her mind with how nonchalant she was about it all. I didn't want an argument. I didn't want a huge scene. So I told her calmly but visibly upset to go and pack some clothes and stuff, and to go to her sister's house or something, because I couldn't have her there. In that moment,
I also asked for her key to the house, and she got a little irritated by that, but did give it to me, then left. The following evening, we did talk on the phone. She called me, I answered, we talked, though there was nothing really to talk about. I did say to her, "So you really have made up your mind?" She said yes, and that this is what she wanted. I can't stress this enough that I really was devastated, and her blasé and nonchalantness to the situation did irritate me, because I think in this raw and fresh time, I was confused by it. How she ended 9 years just like that. But clearly, like I said, she'd obviously been thinking about it and was over her side of things emotionally. The following couple of days, I slowly came to terms with it all and started making plans to organize things. I took her off the car insurance for the car I bought her and went to get it. She didn't like that. I canceled her phone contract. She didn't like that either. I'd stopped her access to my bank account, all that kind of stuff. Naturally, she didn't like any of it, but we're not together anymore, and I was paying for all that. You no longer should have access to any of it. It's not a difficult concept. Things got nasty one night when she asked to come over and pick up some more things. I said yeah, because she did still have a few bits here. She came over, I silently let her in, and went back to the living room, while she went around gathering some stuff in a suitcase she'd bought with her. She came into the living room and picked up a laptop. I said, "You can put that down. That doesn't belong to you." And an argument then broke out. I ended up looking in her suitcase, and there were other things that didn't belong to her, so I took them out while she stood there yelling at me for being petty. I mean, maybe so. I'd let her keep her phone at least after I cancelled the contract, and told her she can keep her engagement ring and do whatever she wants with it. I snapped at her while she was yelling at me and I said, "You have nothing. You have the clothes on your back in this house, your makeup, your hair dryer, your hair straighteners. You can take all that. Everything else in this house isn't yours to just take." She started crying, and I asked her to leave. She sent me a huge text message, basically, in a nutshell, saying I was being unfair. I don't think I have been. I've been real about it all. If we had kids, it absolutely would have been a different situation. But this was two people splitting up, one of which, myself, was paying happily for everything she had. We are not together anymore. How is it unfair of me to take all that away? You are no longer my partner. It is no longer yours. You no longer have the benefit of having me to care for you financially. How is this not understood and being unfair? She now has pretty much nothing, sleeping on her sister's couch, needing to find a job again. It is what it is, and it's not my problem. OP is not an AH for refusing let her ex-girlfriend take with her anything he had bought. His girlfriend demand is unreasonable and unjustified. Instead of OP's ex is an AH, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP gets nothing. Let's now jump on to the next story from Few-Wealth, 2441. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's college after she threw my toddler? For context, my 34 sister, 19, has been staying with my family while she attends college because we live very close by. We were paying for everything because my husband and I make a much steadier income than either of my parents, and we have enough savings together that it just makes more sense for us to pay for my sister rather than my parents, who helped pay for both me and my husband when we were both in school. In return for charging her no rent, feeding her, and paying for college, all I occasionally ask of her is to help me with my 22-month son. It is never for longer than an hour max, and only so I can do things like cook or clean without him clinging to my leg or begging to be hugged. He adores her, so it is much easier to hand him off to her while I try to clean up. She doesn't mind because I usually pay her something like 15 USD when it's any longer than 15 minutes. Please understand, this is never, absolutely never, for longer than an hour. I understand that she has studies, and most times would rather not deal with him. But I always ask if she minds, and whenever she says she's busy or not right now, I always acquiesce and try to find some other way to handle him, usually with YouTube or something similar which I dislike, but it's better than him trying to crawl under my legs when I'm handling a hot pot or something to that effect. Something I have warned her about repeatedly is not to have necklaces, bracelets, earrings, hair clips, etc. when she's taking care of him. Anything that can be pulled or taken off. This is because he has a tendency to pull and play with them, which I know can be painful. Both me and my husband have tried repeatedly to discourage this behavior, but he is still a toddler, so of course it's challenging. He either doesn't understand or thinks our scolding is funny, and most punishments don't work either. We refuse to spank him, but you can't ground a toddler or take their things away when all they do is laugh. 2 days ago, I had to run an errand, and it had seemed inconvenient to take my son when he was taking a nap. I asked her if she could watch him while I went, and she said it was fine. It wouldn't have taken me longer than 20 minutes, which I told her. She again stated it was fine. Before I left,
I noticed she was wearing one of those really thin plastic headbands. I told her it could be dangerous, especially with how thin it was, but she said that if he woke up, she'd take it off and put it out of reach. When I came back, I heard both of them screaming and my toddler wailing. I saw my sister holding her ear and yelling at my toddler son, while he laid on the floor crying. I was furious. I grabbed him, and I saw that his head was bleeding. I immediately assumed the worst and called 911 and an ambulance. When the ambulance did arrive and I finally gave a closer look at my sister, I could see her ear was bleeding. Both of them were sent to the hospital. Apparently, what had happened was that my son had woke up after I left. The two of them were playing together on the couch when she got distracted by something on her phone. When she looked away, my son took her headband and poked it into her ear. She had apparently thrown him onto the ground to get him away from her and stop him from poking it further. I was still furious with her for obvious reasons. While thankfully the bleeding was just a large cut he must have gotten when he fell, the doctors say he feels so hard he now has a concussion. The headband apparently damaged my sister's eardrum, however, and now her hearing is damaged, which I'm sure I'll feel worse about when my emotions aren't so angry. We paid for all of her hospital fees, of course. Obviously, my husband and I told her under no uncertain terms that she was going to move out and that we will no longer be paying for her schooling after this semester is complete, but we will not be pressing charges or pursuing legal action, which the paramedics had explained we could do. The problem is that now, several family members are saying we are treating her too harsh. My parents are saying that we should forgive her because it had been an accident, and that I shouldn't have trusted her with my son to begin with since he isn't her responsibility. But if she didn't want to take care of him, she could have said so. It's not like she's an irresponsible teenager. She is a grown adult capable of, say, restraining a toddler if they grab something they shouldn't. I do not think I am the asshole at all, but literally everyone in my life is acting like I am for expecting my sister to do the bare basics of keeping my son safe when I ask her to. ETA some info now that I'm calmer. We were only going to be paying for 2 years of schooling, which my parents did for me. Paying for all 5 years would be unfeasible. Regarding food, I tend to cook in big batches anyways, so it's not much trouble for her to eat with us as well. Rent is similar, we have a guest room, and as long as she keeps her area clean and cleans up after herself, there's no relative issue as well. The only reason I paid her to take care of my son anytime she babysat longer than 15 minutes is because her classes require a lot of time and energy. This was something I could sympathize with, so I offered to pay her $15 if she could take care of him while I handled the house, since my husband has always been someone who disliked clutter. These are all things I wouldn't have done if they weren't somewhat possible. Edit. To answer some common questions, I want to be clear, I do discipline him. When he does things he is not supposed to, we redirect him, we scold him, we tell him what he is doing is wrong, we take away what he was throwing, etc. There really isn't much more we can do, aside from spanking, which neither me nor my husband would ever allow. According to the doctors at the hospital, thankfully my sister's eardrum should heal within the next 2 to 3 months, as it was only a minor tear. The doctor also stated that my son should heal as well within the next 4 weeks. So far, I still have not spoken to her since telling her to move out, but according to my parents, she has been extremely remorseful since the incident, and says that she feels horrible about what happened. I still don't think I'm ready to talk to her without letting my anger get the better of me, so a meeting between us isn't likely to happen anytime soon. OP is not an AH for protecting his son. Her harsh behavior towards her sister is 100% justified. Her sister is an AH for putting his son in danger. So, I would rate the OP's sister 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets 0. Let's now move on to the next story from full_technician_4592 AITA for asking my MIL how many of my husband's soccer games she went to after she insulted me for taking time off work to be with my kids. 37F, I'm married and a mom of 3, 7M, 3F, and 1F. I'm an attorney and have always worked hard and taken my career seriously. I never thought I'd want to take time away from work, but before I had my youngest daughter, I was feeling burnt out from working nonstop and also taking care of 2 young children. I was always tired when I was with my kids and hardly had any time to spend with them during the week. My husband and I spoke about it, and agreed it would be the best thing for our family for me to take some time off work. I don't see myself doing this for more than a few years, and I plan on going back to work once my youngest starts kindergarten. I feel incredibly fortunate that I have the financial ability to spend the extra time with my kids when they're so little. I know I won't get this time with them back, and that I'll have the rest of my life to focus on my career. Everyone has been supportive of this decision except for my MIL. My MIL is also an attorney, and she's incredibly driven and well known in our city. I know she was very happy I ended up with her son, and I think it's in large part because she respects women who are ambitious and passionate about their careers. I've heard her talk negatively about stay-at-home mums over the years. Specifically, she thinks they're boring, putting themselves in a position to be taken advantage of, and setting poor examples for their daughters. She also thinks men who want to be with stay-at-home mums are insecure and just want someone they can control. So obviously, she didn't seem pleased when we told her about my plan to take some time off work, but she's kept her mouth shut for the most part. Things changed last night when we had her and my file over for dinner. I cooked, and my MIL joked that she never thought she'd live to see the day when I prepared a home-cooked meal. I said I have a bit more time on my hands now, and I actually enjoy it. She said she's glad I'm putting my law school education to good use. I asked what she meant, and my MIL said she didn't understand my new phase. She said I spent so much time and money getting my education, and it seems like a waste to be home cooking instead of taking advantage of my skills. She also said I seem unhappy, and thinks it's because I'm home all day instead of developing myself. I told my MIL I'm incredibly happy, and she said I'm lying to myself and not setting the best example possible for my little girls. She says it's important to show them they can work hard and also be great mothers. She even said I'm teaching them it's okay to depend on a man and waste their potential. She then said that her mom was brilliant and never had the opportunity to have a career because of the era she was born into, and it makes her sad to see me throw away a life that her mother and so many other women would have for. My husband jumped in and said I'm not dependent on him, since I have a great education and resume, and I can go back to work at any time. He also said that I've been working 70 to 80 hours per week since I was 26, and there's nothing wrong with me taking some time off to be with our kids when they're young. My MIL then asked my husband if he put me up to this, and said she raised him better than that. My MIL said, I'm too talented and smart to be home, and that she hardly recognizes the ambitious and passionate 20-year-old that she first met. I started crying and told my MIL that I feel good about my decision, and don't appreciate her giving me unsolicited advice. I said that I love my career, but my kids are the most important thing to me, and I want to be a more involved mom than I was before. My MIL asked why I can't work and be involved with them, and I said it's just harder and I felt I was missing out on their lives before. She asked if I think women who work are missing out on their kids' lives, and I said women who work as much as I did certainly miss out on parts of their lives and don't have as much time to be with their kids. My MIL said that she didn't miss out on her son's life, and I asked how many of his soccer games she went to. My husband was a college soccer player, and he's told me in the past that his parents never went to his games when he was little, and that he always had to carpool with teammates. He's also told me that his mom is a great adult mom since she's interested in his life and gives great advice, but she wasn't as interested in him when he was a young kid. My comments set my MIL off, and she said I was disrespecting women who paved the way for me to have a career. My MIL and FEL left shortly after. My husband is obviously upset about the situation. He thinks his mom was way out of line, but also doesn't like that I brought up the fact that she never went to his soccer games. He said I stooped to her level, and also that it wasn't my place to comment on his childhood. My husband feels horrible about the situation and has apologized for his mom's judgmental comments, but desperately wants us to work it out. He wants us to sit down for coffee and apologize to each other, but I'm not ready.
AITA for my comments, and do I owe my Mill an apology? OP is not an AH for prioritizing his family. Her mother-in-law is an AH for always criticizing OP for not continuing her career and choosing family time. OP has the right to do whatever she wants to do. So her behavior towards her mother-in-law's criticism is completely justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's mother-in-law 2 out of 5. And OP gets 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Soaring-Spider 1738. Am I the for wanting to put some distance between me and my mother,
and possibly in the future go little to no contact? I, 18 female, grew up in a household with 2 younger parents. My grandparents raised me part-time while my mom, R, finished college and started her new job at 21, and my father, H, 19, 20 at the time, worked overnights. I didn't see my parent as often as I would have liked during early childhood. Still, they did what they needed to do to provide for me, and for that, I'm forever grateful. Growing up, I admired my mom. She was my biggest role model, and she inspired me. In my eyes, she was my hero, but she was also my first bully. Everyone loves my mom. They say she's independent, hard-headed, and in some cases intimidating. I love her, but she's incredibly mean, plain and simple. My mom would comment on my weight and my appearance, often telling me I needed to watch what I ate, and I needed to always look put together. My mom was always tough on me about my grades, often telling me I needed to be better and try harder. This led to me developing an unhealthy level of perfectionism, and even today, I still struggle with the idea of being perfect. As I got older, she would always comment on my body. By the time I got to middle school, I had developed a full ED that I never told her about. Throughout the years, she would continue to comment on my body, inveterately triggering me further. She would comment on things like my hair or my skin and hyperpigmentation, saying I need to bleach my skin. She would also comment on her body, saying I ruined her perfect figure when she got pregnant with me, and that she used to look great with a six-pack. And I gave her, in her own words, a hideous C-section scar. Now that I look back on it, my mother did other things I disagree with, like calling me names like a wench when I made her angry, or pulling my hair and pinching me when I didn't listen. And when I said I didn't like what she did, she said I was being dramatic, or a crybaby. I also struggled with my mental health growing up, constantly dealing with anxiety and depression. My mental health reached its peak during my sophomore year of high school. My depression was at an all-time high, and I was seriously considering ending my life. Every night, I would cry myself to sleep and be on the phone with someone from the hotline. I looked back at the pictures from that time, and I looked half dead. I looked like I was already gone. During that time, I tried to reach out for help from my mom and dad, but my mom basically told me it was all in my head and mind over matter. I cried every day and begged her not to send me to school. Keep in mind, my mother was the parent who would send their kid to school with a fever instead of letting them stay home. So that was automatically a no. My mom always said I was being dramatic, or I was making her feel like a terrible mother. She always said she didn't know how to fix me. I don't blame my mom. I was struggling, and I probably made her life difficult, but her words still hurt me and made me feel even more alone. Fast forward to today. I am 18 and currently in my first semester of college. I moved away from home and currently love my life. My grades are great, I have a job, and I love my roommate. My mom wants me to call her once a day. I did that initially to appease her, but as time has passed, I usually stick to texts. Every time I'm on the phone with her, I feel like I get snappy or annoyed at times when I don't even mean to. I still love my mom, but the space has been better for me and my mental health. Even when we are on the phone, she finds ways to make passive comments asking when I'm going to go to the gym, or if I'm done rotting in bed and being lazy. I still love my mom and care about her opinion, but my life away has made me realize that space is good. As I'm getting closer to winter break, I know I don't want to go home. I'm even already stressing about summer break and trying to find internships or jobs to keep me out of the house. While I love my parents, my mom is someone I fear becoming in the future. I have my mother's eyes and her anger that haunts me every day. Once I finish undergrad, I hope to go to grad school and never look back. But I feel guilty for feeling like this. I know my mom still loves me, just in her own way. I don't know what to do or how to feel. I hate feeling like this because I feel like I discredit all her love for me. Does anyone have any advice? So, am I the asshole for wanting to put some distance between me and my mother, and possibly in the future, go little to no contact? OP is not an AH for wanting to maintain distance from her mom who always bullied her and ruined her peace of mind. OP's decision to set his boundaries is completely justified. As for OP's mom, she is a big AH, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.